We had a really good stretch, and now we're learning some things, and we got to find a way through it. It sucks, don't get me wrong, but there's been some good conversations that have come out of it, and we'll be better for it. But some guys are not feeling it right now, and we have to continue to grind. It's not ideal, but it's part of 162. So the quicker we get out of it, the better. But yeah, we're in the middle of it right now.
That was Ollie Marmol talking about the offense a couple of days ago alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. Alex, the Cardinals' offense was always going to be, at least in my opinion, the thing that determined the ceiling for the 2025 Cardinals season. And you look at it, through May 29th, the Cardinals were 8 games above 500. And so you look at why. Why were they playing so well? Well, the pitching was surprisingly good. Matthew Liberatore had really taken shape as what appeared at the time to be a legit number 2 starter for a Major League Baseball contender. Sonny Gray had been pitching pretty well for them. The bullpen had really solidified itself. But more importantly, when they were 8 games above 500, 32-24 on May 29th, they were one of the best offenses in Major League Baseball. As a team, they were batting .260. As a team, they were slugging .405. That slugging percentage is fine, but it's like 12th, 15th in Major League Baseball. It's fine enough, but the average was carrying them. You look at the underlying numbers. They were not getting lucky. They were getting the batted ball luck, so to speak, that you would expect for those teams. And then May 30th came, and the Cardinals went into this massive slump that we have seen for the entirety of June. They're 5-11 since May 30th. And the offense in this stretch, we speak so much about the pitching because it has not been as good, but the offense in this 16-game stretch is batting .230 with a slugging percentage of .345, guys. .345. Some of that, sure, it's a little bit unlucky, but a lot of it is, man, this offense has just really dipped. So what's happened? Who are the guys that are leading to this? Well, you guys know Lars Nootbaar. He was hitting well, and now he's just not hitting. He's striking out every time he goes to the plate. To give context on this, he was 20% above league average when we woke up on May 30th, and since then, he's 91% below league average offensively.
Oh.
He's at a 9 in terms of his OPS plus.
A 9? Is there any other numbers around that?
Just a 9.
Okay.
It's not what you want.
Good.
Brendan Donovan was an MVP candidate when we woke up on May 30th. 50% above league average offensively. Since then, a 69 OPS.
Nice. Keep it there. Keep it there, Brendan.
Wilson Contreras has been great, don't get me wrong. Arenado, though, has dipped. Scott has not only dipped, but he's been really bad in the month of May. Mason Wynn went from 25% above league average offensively to 35 OPS plus, which is 65% below league average offensively. Burleson's been good. Herrera's been good, but not as good as he was in the first 2 months of the season. So, Alex, the offense overall has had this massive dip in production, and that, in my opinion, is really what's led to this 16-game slump that we've seen from the Cardinals, where they're 5-11 in their last 16 games.
Yeah, and you know what? This was always the identity of the team. Like, even at the beginning of the season when we were talking about the pitching going through it, the bullpen was a disaster, but we said, look, if this team's winning baseball games, it's because their offense is high-powered and elite. And then when the pitching got fixed, we saw the Cardinals running away with things. Even if they were down by 5 runs, they'd come back in games, and they would blow the games out of the water and then be like, cool, easy win. It's always been the identity of this team was your offense from top to bottom. There's not one guy that carries the load. It's 5, 6, or 7 guys that are doing it, and the clutch factor is what I really judged this team off of.
You love RISP.
I do. What does it mean to me, T-Bone?
Everything. Literally everything.
Literally everything. It's the only thing I judge off of. Get out of here with your advanced analytics. But think of the guys that you just... No, it's not. It's not, damn it. Hit the ball with runners at second or third. Anyway, think of the guys that you just went through in the slumps that you're talking about. Lars Nootbaar, Mason Wynn, Nolan Arenado. Then look at the runners in scoring position category for the season. Lars Nootbaar, in terms of OPS with runners in scoring position prior to the month of June, was sitting at 5th. Nolan Arenado was sitting at 6th for the team. Mason Wynn was sitting at 8th for the team. Like, all of these guys that you just mentioned were top 10 with runners in scoring position.
Are you talking about, like, in Major League Baseball?
Yeah, no, on the Cardinals roster.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand.
They were really good prior to the month of June in runners in scoring position, and now they're starting to dip lower and lower.
Okay.
And that's what's changed. PK doesn't like my take. Cool. You know what? I'm going to sit over here in the corner.
I don't
You want me to turn
understand.
this mic off?
No, it's fine. I'll sit over here. I saw the tone.
You're saying like
The runners in scoring position all the way up until June 1st with the guys that you just listed that are going through it in the last 3 weeks were really good with runners in scoring position.
Gotcha.
And
I
in
didn't
the last
understand the
three,
ranking part of it.
well,
That's
I was
where
just
got
listing
thrown
where
off.
they were at prior to June 1st.
Gotcha. Do you understand? Am I?
Tanner,
I
you
got
can
what
take
he's
it from
going
here.
for. They're just not hitting with runners in scoring position. I also think a big part of that is they're not in scoring position much anymore.
Well, they were in the 2 games against the Brewers.
Well, that series, sure. But overall, they're not hitting at period. Like you mentioned, the slug numbers for them as a team, like they're not slugging, they're not hitting for average as much as they were. They're not getting on base, and all that's going to lead to less opportunities for runners in scoring position. And then when you get on top of they're not hitting right now.
This was the argument that he and I had before, and he found out he was wrong a couple years ago.
No, I think T-Bone's 100. They were hitting in general.
Yeah.
And they were hitting with runners in scoring position. Now they're not hitting in general, and they're not hitting with runners in scoring position. They're not just slumping in those spots. Alex, what was different is they used to hit, and then they would totally fail,
Pee
just
down their
fall
leg.
on their faces when they would get a runner in scoring position. And so that was the disconnect where it's like, wait, what's going on here? And it was a lack of a clutch factor. You were right on that. I totally concede that argument. This year is different in that regard where they're just not hitting. It doesn't matter the situation. Over the last month, I just read you the numbers. They're batting .230 overall as a team, and they're slugging like .330. That's horrible in every situation. And then when they get into those runners in scoring position, yes, they are still struggling.
And those are the ones you notice the most. Why? Because the game is probably on the line. Like you mentioned that Brewers series, and I'm not taking away from your point. They're not hitting with runners in scoring position. But you notice it a lot, especially in that Milwaukee game where these games are tight, right? And to your point on the offense kind of raises the ceiling for the St. Louis Cardinals. The offense can carry the pitching. If the pitching's not having a bad stretch, the Cardinals can be in games. As you saw in the Toronto one when they came back and made it interesting and lost 10-9. We saw that early on in the season as well. They can score runs. They can hit. They can keep you in ball games when the pitching staff's not going through it. What you're seeing now, though, is when the offense doesn't hit, there's not enough good pitching on this roster to overcome that. And that is what you're seeing right now because you look at some of the games they're losing right now, they're losing 5-2, 3-2, 4-2. Those are all scores that you look at and go, okay, that sounds like the Cardinals pitching, giving up about 5 runs a game, 4 runs a game. That sounds about right. The question is, what the hell happened to the offense? And you just mentioned it. Nootbaar's going through it. Herrera's going through it. Everybody basically in this lineup is starting to slump, except for the guys that are fighting for a chance to get into the lineup, like a Burleson and a Gorman.
There are some games that you can look back at, like Texas, for example, right? 11-1, 8-1. Yes, your offense stunk, and also your pitching was horrible. The Kansas City series, 10-7, 7-5. Okay, yeah, I get those. I can understand how you don't end up winning those games. But then you look recently, the Cardinals pitching had allowed 4 runs in 9 innings against Toronto, and you find a way to lose in the 10th. The Cardinals pitching allowed 3 runs in each of their recent 2 losses against the Milwaukee Brewers. You've got to find ways to win those games. Well, the way that you're constructed right now, you've got to win those 2 games. And they couldn't find a way to do it, especially in a series like that when so much is on the line. And you're going head-to-head against a direct competitor for both the wild card and the divisional race. For you to drop those 2 games, man, that changes things about where you're at in the standings. It changes things about the way that fans view you as a roster. It changes a lot. So now you're on the road, you're at Chicago, you're going up against one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball. And you had an off day, which is something that this team has not had a whole lot of. They have had 0 off days in the previous 2 weeks prior to yesterday. You got to win at least 2 out of 3, and you probably need to sweep this series, man. And so my question to you guys, who are the players, whether it's in this series, but really we're talking about for the next few weeks prior to the deadline or prior to the All-Star break, who are the guys that you feel like have the most to prove in this stretch? You're looking, this season was always about runway and evaluation periods, all of those different things. Who are the players for you, maybe the player, that would be under the microscope right now?
Are we going just position players, or are we going...
You can do whatever.
Because...
I prefer to stick with the offense right now because we're going to get to one I know that is in the 12 o'clock hour on the pitching side of things. But.
Okay. Yeah, because I have one pitcher, but we'll save that. For me, Lars Nootbaar is suspect number 1. You've gone through it now for about a week, and so much so that they had to take you out of the lineup and try and readjust the batting order, and we saw what happens with it. So I think Lars Nootbaar is not a guy that loses his role for the team, but it's somebody that has a lot of pressure on him to figure out what type of rut you're in and how to get out of it.
I think I agree with that one. I think Nootbaar's the clear candidate for this because When he was going early on in the season, we weren't having this conversation. We were talking about how well they're playing, how they're always in games. We're talking about how much success they're having with runners in scoring position. And now, since he's been struggling over the last month, the offense has really cooled, and it has really started to slow down to where they're looking for answers at the top of the order. I think it's Newbar. We know he goes through these stretches. The question is now, okay, how quick can you get out of this? And what is your ceiling? I think they're still trying to figure that out. They need Lars Newbar to get back to being the Newt of old for them to have a chance to try and right this ship offensively and avoid potentially being sellers at the deadline.
Have you guys looked at Mason Wynn's numbers in this 16-game stretch that we're talking about? Have you seen them?
It's not been very good.
He's batting .210 with an on-base percentage of .230 and an OPS of .485. He has very little power to speak of, does not have a home run in that stretch. How many RBIs do you think he has in his last 16 games? He's been batting, I think, second this entire time.
Fewer than 5.
Yeah, I was going to say like 3.
Yeah, I was going to say 3 or 4.
2. Dang. 2 RBIs in 16 games while batting toward the top of the lineup. That's not good enough, man. And I love Mason Wynn. You guys know how much I love him as a player. But if you're going to be somebody that is counted upon and you want to see yourself as somebody that should bat in the top 3 to 5 of this lineup, you want to bat in the top half, that's how you view yourself. You got to be more productive than this. I'm totally with you guys on Newbar, but if I was going to go to somebody different, I would say it's Mason Wynn, because the only one that is close to Newt in terms of like offensive upside that has had these kinds of struggles is Mason Wynn. He's got to be better, man. He's going to get a lot of opportunities. He's going to bat a lot with runners in scoring position, Alex's favorite statistic. And I think that he is somebody that needs to start getting going. He did get that off day. He had 2 days off now. Hopefully he's well rested. We'll see what he looks like going up against the Chicago White Sox starting tonight. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to talk a little bit of Blues with our guy Jeremy Rutherford, Blues insider for The Athletic. He was able to speak with the Blues chairman, Tom Stillman. He has that Q&A up on The Athletic right now. We are going to give our thoughts on that interview coming up next. We'll hear from JR at 11:30. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You can check us out on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. We'll give you our thoughts on Tom Stillman's answers next here on 101 ESPN.
Yes, it did. It did with attendance and sponsorship and all sorts. It really helped our, that year, the fiscal year that ends soon. But it also has it also reaches into next year because that helps with season ticket sales for next year. It really builds excitement for those sales.
That was Tom Stillman, Blues chairman, on with us. What was that, about 2 months ago now? Month and a half ago?
It was a month ago.
How long ago was the season?
This was when he was upside down on the Zooms or the YouTube. Yeah, I don't. It was like a month ago.
May 4th. It's been 6 weeks since the Blues season came
Time
to
flies
an
when
end.
the Cardinals are having fun.
Yeah, remember when the Cardinals were fun?
Can I ask a question? Is the NHL the only sport where it feels like when your team's out of it, it feels like they're out of
NBA.
it for? Is it NBA too?
NBA for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I say I feel like when the Blues get eliminated, I feel like they're gone in the abyss for
College
months.
basketball kind of has that. Where if your team doesn't make it to the NCAA tournament, the NCAA tournament takes forever to get concluded, but not to the same degree as the NHL playoffs or the NBA playoffs. Those are the two that feel like they last forever.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like once you hit the offseason, when your team's eliminated in the playoffs, then you start watching the teams in the playoffs and be like, oh, I want that guy on our team. So free agency just starts once your team's eliminated from the playoffs.
100%. So that was Tom Stillman talking about the cap spike, what lies ahead, and how this year and then making the playoffs really did help their revenue streams to be able to spend to wherever they need to get to. Alex, over on The Athletic, our guy Jeremy Rutherford was able to talk with Tom Stillman today, and he was asked once again about the salary cap. He said, speaking of this roster, the NHL salary cap, JR said this, is jumping to $95 million next season, $105 million the year after that, and $113 million in 2027. What is your take on the dramatic rise, and will Blues ownership continue spending to the cap? Here is Tom Stillman's answer. I want to get your thoughts after I say this, Alex. First, on the rise of the cap. We certainly understand it because it was artificially held down during the CBA that was entered into during COVID. We knew that it was going to rise. At the same time, that's not easy for a smaller middle market team like us, so it does present challenges in developing the revenue that we need to keep up and remain competitive. Will we spend to the cap? We certainly will spend to the cap if that's what makes sense. But we're not going to spend to the cap just to say that we spent to the cap. We'll look at the facts and the circumstances, where we think we are as a team, who's available, what's best in the short and long term, and just what makes sense, end quote. All right, that is a relatively long answer, but Alex, when you hear that, your takeaway was what?
Well, the first takeaway was looking at that first answer of him talking about staying competitive with the market and developing the revenue, because when you're talking about $113 million in terms of cap space in what, 3 seasons, he's right. You're a middle market team trying to compete with the Rangers and the Maple Leafs and the Oilers. That's not going to be an easy thing to do. So trying to generate more revenue is important in all of this one. The second part, I think, is what fans really look at, and they see the will we spend to the cap? We spend to it if it makes sense. First thing I thought of was like, okay, this is typical Tom Stillman speak. And if you don't believe me, go look at the Q&A last year that JR did. This is what he said. We're not going to spend to the cap for the sake of saying we spent to the cap. I guess you could say at that time, we're bringing on young players. Maybe our payroll would drop a bit. That's fine regardless of what we do. So he gives the same answer, just phrasing it differently. But then when you kind of read it a couple of times, I looked at it and I'm thinking, me personally, I think Tom Stillman is saying we're not going to be players in this free agent market. To spend to the cap just to say you're spending to the cap, that's what teams do in free agency. They're going out there and they say, we've got this hole, let's go out there and outbid 10 other teams for that specific player or that specific position we're looking at. So if you're not going to spend to the cap just to say you're spending to the cap, to me, that says, look, if there's a trade that makes sense for our team that betters our roster, that's where we spend more money. But I don't know if they're going to be players in this free agent market when you're talking about bidding wars for guys that don't make sense for the short term or the long term for the Blues.
T-Bone, what was your read on it?
Yeah, I don't know if I read the same way as Alex of they're not going to be spenders in free agency. I think it was just, hey, we're going to end up doing what we think is best for the organization. And if that means we will spend in free agency, then we will. If it means we're going to the market, then we'll go to the trade market as well. I do think they are adding to the center position this year. There's no question about that. I don't think it is as clear as, hey, we just aren't going to spend money. I think if they feel there is somebody that's out there, like if they like P.S. Suter, I expect them to go out there and spend that money on Suter and be willing to pay that dollar figure for it. So that was kind of my takeaway from it is I don't necessarily think this eliminates them from free agency. I think this is Tom Stillman saying, hey, we're open. We're just going to do what we think is best for the organization.
I just keep going back to the Doug Armstrong quote from the end of the season press conference where he said, quote, I think there are good free agents available, end quote. And then he added in there, like, if they're still available on July 1st, we're willing to give them money. And it becomes a question of, like, are they willing to accept our money or not? Because it's a two-way street there.
Yeah.
I did not read this the same way that you did, Alex, in terms of, like, I don't know how much I can internalize on what this means for this year. I do think there are open questions about what this means for their future. I think this is more about 2026 and 2027 and 2028 and the cap that continues to rise. Like, when you get to $120 million in the cap, 2028, let's say, that's a $30 million change from what it was this past season. That is a huge increase. And if you're in Tom Stillman's shoes or the ownership group's shoes, you have to ask yourself, okay, where is that money coming from? Because our revenues, I would imagine, on a local level, probably will not increase $30 million from where they were last year to where they are likely to be in 2028. The TV deal is not going up in price the way that it once was on a consistent basis. And unlike the NFL, where almost everything is national, stuff is localized. So, like, Toronto is going to get more money locally from their TV deal than the St. Louis Blues will. So how are you making up that gap? How do you make up the gap of the $30 million? I don't know. To me, that is what I read into this as, is it's more about the future as opposed to where we are at right now. I don't think today they are going to have any issues with getting to the cap. I think 3 to 5 years from now, it very well may be a question.
Yeah, and that's just a big question mark that I don't even know if Tom Stillman has the answer for right there.
Totally.
Waiting for the TV deals to figure out if that's going to happen or if they go another route, and then what does the team look like in that sense? What are some of the contracts? That's the part that I do find fascinating, because $113 million with the CBA negotiations taking place right now, like when that gets approved, and who knows if there's going to be another expansion team, because that always helps ownership when expansion teams come into play because everybody divvies up a lot of money. But I mean, I think for him, 3 years from now, you're hoping that when it's $113 million, the team is competitive, the internal options have become stars, and it's easier to pay those guys. But for right now, yeah, I think you can only operate on a year-by-year basis if you're Tom Stillman because of what the uncertainty is.
All right, so there's another piece on this over on The Athletic. And speaking of free agency, Alex, we have talked so much about the center options. And so when there was a piece that was written earlier today, just full disclosure, it was written by Dom, and it was about the top wingers that are available. Alex and T-Bone both came in today, and I'm glad that they did this. Said, hey, I didn't read it. The Blues aren't interested in the wingers.
Yeah.
There's no reason for me to check it out. Blues are not going to be interested in wingers. They've got all that they could possibly ask for. I agree with you guys, but I did click on it because I wanted to see if there were potentially some center options that were listed in the winger category. And there were indeed. A few of these include Mikael Granlund, that would be one that you could go to. Claude Giroux is another that was listed on the wingers. Ryan Donato was listed among the wingers. And then there was one other in here that I'm going to have to scroll down to see. Jack Roslovic was the other. Let's just start out here. He is not a fan of Jack Roslovic.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people are. His play was not very good this postseason.
Yeah, not a fan at all, and basically says good luck to anybody. He was listed under Brandon Saad as a free agency option. Let's put it that way.
Nobody trusts Dom anyway.
But we've talked a lot about Mikael Granlund, who's not good defensively, but does put up consistently 50 to 60 points. T-Bone and I are I would say T-Bone's on one end of the spectrum, Alex is on the other end of the spectrum, and I'm somewhere in between on Granlund. Would be the way that I would describe us. T-Bone's very much in favor. Alex is very much, I don't want him. No, please no. And then there's me in the middle where it's like, yeah, like on the right price. If you don't get the other guys, like, yeah, sure, I can see how you get there. Here's what Dom had to say about him. Hot take, I don't think Granlund has changed all that much from the seemingly awful 23 season and his seemingly stronger work since. Yes, he's been better, but the degree to which is likely overstated. It's easy to be fooled by the points that Granlund puts up, and Granlund is a prime example of this. What's changed for Granlund over the last 2 seasons is that he's treated defense as completely optional. That has allowed him to bounce back to being a 60-point player, but it has come at a tremendous cost the other way. Some might argue that was because he played for the Sharks, but his expected goals per 60 minutes was actually worse in Dallas than it was in San Jose. Granlund was never a strong play driver, but he was never this much of a liability either. Given his age, Granlund's next deal has all of the makings of a regrettable one. Under the right circumstances, he can work well as an offensive force in a sheltered line, but that does make him a tough fit and a tough sell at $5 million as is currently projected. Anything over $4 million will probably be too much. Points can make a player rich, but when there is no substance underneath, they could be a red herring towards actually winning games. Here's the quote for Alex. One of Granlund's best comps being post-Penguins Phil Kessel.
Oh, my God.
Speaks for itself, end quote.
Post-Penguins Phil Kessel was not good.
First of all, that's some excellent writing right there. Yeah. I know we give Dom a lot of crap.
Dom must hate Mikael Granlund and was making it known.
Oh, boy. I think I'm swaying more towards Alex.
Yeah, I am. And you want to put that, what he just defined, you want to put that as a centerman? No way. I can't have a centerman be a defense be damned. I'm going for points and offense. And he's right. Like, the San Jose numbers are what you cite, the 60 points. There's a minus 23 on that team. Somebody's got to score on San Jose's roster, right? So I am so far away from Granlund to the point that I don't even want to talk about it, because you're bringing him on as a winger, and that is the one area you don't need to address. So absolutely not.
My personal opinion on the matter, like, if Jim Montgomery believes that Granlund can play center, I'll sign up for that. I'll take his blessing. Here's the thing, though. I do not believe with anything inside of me that Jim Montgomery is signing up for that profile to be a center.
For a guy that's defense be damned? Yeah, no way.
Yeah, when he said his defense is considered optional, I was like, okay, well, you can go ahead and cross him off.
So basically, this guy that's going to be getting $5+ million in multiple years, he's not going to be on the ice in a 6-on-5 situation, which, guess what? That was a big problem for the Blues last year. It's Jim Montgomery's problem with this team.
Yeah, so 200-foot offensive weapon, Mikael Granlund is not.
Yeah, he's a 100-foot offensive player.
Yes.
That's how I would describe him.
I remember when you play like pickup games in like elementary, middle school, right? You'd have the guy that was the cherry picker, and he'd play occasional defense, but more often than not, once the ball goes up in the air, he's sprinting to the other side, waiting for somebody to pass it up court so he can get his whatever points.
Yep.
That's Mikael Granlund.
Yeah, but
that's
he also doesn't get
that guy.
He also doesn't get the. No, we had that guy in Verona, and the Verona thing went wrong very fast.
We didn't have the roster around Verona.
I don't think you got the roster around Granlund.
Phil Kessel, when he left Pittsburgh, was only a minus 69. Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, he was bad. He was good on that one year in Vegas because there was like, it's Phil the Thrill. He was a poster child for entertainment purposes.
All right, he's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. JR joins us next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals back in action tonight as they start a 3-game set at the Chicago White Sox. 6:40 will be first pitch. Matthew Liberatore will be on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline for our weekly chat with our friend, the Blues insider for The Athletic. He's Jeremy Rutherford joining us here on the show. JR, appreciate your time, appreciate your article, your Q&A with the Blues chairman, Tom Stillman. We were just breaking this down a little bit. One of the quotes that you had from him on the salary cap going up and how the Blues are expecting to navigate all of that. We gave our thoughts, and I am curious for yours. When you heard his answer on how the Blues will navigate the spike in the cap, what were your thoughts? What was your takeaway from that?
Yeah, thanks for having me. First of all, I listened to the interview that you guys did with him a couple months ago, and some of the questions are fairly similar. And I did ask him about the salary cap and how the Blues are going to handle that, just because I have a lot of fans that ask me how the Blues are going to handle this. And so, what better way to do it than to ask Tom Stillman? And before I dissect his answer, guys, I think you have to keep in mind a couple things. That first of all, these guys don't want to paint themselves into a corner, whether it be Doug Armstrong, Tom Stillman, whomever. So I think they're going to give you an answer that answers the question and gives it some thought, but also they're not going to come out and say yes or no, we are going to spend to the cap, we're not going to spend to the cap. I don't know how much you can read into what he says in the article in terms of, it's hard to predict the future, even if you're them. So, whether it be the TV money or whether it be, Sam Bennett wants to come to St. Louis or he doesn't want to come to St. Louis and are you paying big bucks to one guy or what are you doing? I think it's a difficult situation to predict what they're going to do, but I believe him. I don't think it's ownership speak. I believe him when he says we'll take it as it goes and see who's available and see what the climate is in terms of the salary cap going up. Because if a player is available, I can't see them saying we're not going to jump on that because we just don't think spending to the cap is the right thing to do this year. It's similar to the Jim Montgomery hire. Granted, they weren't paying Drew Bannister a lot of money, but when that situation developed, Tom Stillman said, Doug, let's do it. Let's do it yesterday. Let's go. So I think they just need to play it by ear. And as they understand and know what the income and the resources are going to be moving forward, the revenue that they can generate in different ways moving forward in this economic world, I think then that's going to tell them more as they go along what they're able to spend.
Jer, we've talked ad nauseum of this free agent market and some of the guys that could make sense for the Blues, but kind of a broader question. When we interviewed Doug Armstrong after his media availability, he talked about, always looking to improve, even if it's 5%. You go off of what the Blues did last year and you say, how can we improve 5% more from that? When you look at the options and what the contracts could potentially be for the Blues this offseason, does this free agent market make the Blues 5% better next year?
Well, I think it could, depending on who you go out there and get. The thing is, like who's going to be available and how much you're going to pay them. When I look at these free agent guys that are going to be available, like you look at all the lists that are being put out right now, I know we can say this just about every season, but those guys at the top – and even kind of that next tier, they played pretty well and put up some good numbers, and they're going to have every right to ask for the type of money that they're going to ask for, especially with the cap going up. So I don't know that this current situation, unfolds well for the Blues in terms of, A, the cap going up, these guys can ask more, and B, these top guys really perform. So, I think that if they're looking in free agency, is it going to be a second tier? Is it going to be a third tier? Is it going to be a guy that you want to bring in and on a 2 or 3 year deal and he kind of abides some time until Dalibor Dvorsky's ready? Or, do you expect a Snuggerud or Bolduc to really help you out in that top 6 next year and maybe you don't have to go out and spend $8 or $9 million on a second or third tier free agent? I think those are the questions that they're probably answering internally as we head into this free agency period.
I'm glad you mentioned his name, JR, because something that we've talked about over the last couple of days is Dalibor Dvorsky and how he plays into the decisions this offseason. We talked about this a lot for the Cardinals a couple of years ago, where they were potentially in the shortstop market, but you knew that Mason Wynn was coming, and he was a guy that they had really high expectations for. And so they said, you know what, we're not going to go block that spot for him. We're going to piece this thing together. Tommy Edman will be our shortstop for a year, and then hopefully Mason Wynn will take over for the next decade. It's worked out now that they're here. When you look at the Blues situation with Dvorsky, JR, when you talk to people, whether it's with the team, around the organization, or scouts in general, how far away do they believe Dalibor Dvorsky is from really impacting the NHL level and being a regular as a second or a third line center?
Yeah, I think it's a great comparison. I've paid attention to the Cardinals shortstop situation. I've paid attention to Wynn, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think you can compare the two, even though different sports, different situations. I think that with Dalibor Dvorsky, it's going to be a couple things that might have an impact on him. And one is that the Blues probably feel after this second half surge and this playoff appearance that they're further along than they thought, 6 months ago. And so does that mean you can't wait for Dalibor Dvorsky to be ready? Maybe you have to go out and find that second tier center to come in and maybe play middle six and then hold you over to until Dalibor Dvorsky is ready. Plus, I know they're not basing it off of 2 games with Dalibor Dvorsky, but I think internally they probably see that, still a little raw and still needs to work on the pace, still probably lacks some physicality, issues, not in terms of playing physical, but just maturing with his body and his strength. And I think the one thing that Doug keeps reminding everybody is, even though we've heard his name for a couple of years now, Dvorsky, he's still 19 years old. So I think he's still on track in terms of what he did at the AHL level. He was on their all-star team. Look, he's playing for his country. There's a lot of good things, but yet we have to keep in mind that he's 19 years old. So it's not like he's behind. It's not like he's off track. It's not like any of that. But I still think it could be another year or so before you can say, okay, he's our opening night third line center, or in a couple years, opening night second line center. I think that's going to take some time. And with the Blues being a little bit more competitive than they were, I think they might have to make the decision based on that.
All right, JR, I know you listen to our show religiously. You love this show.
All the time. All the time.
I'm not going to just allow us to crap on your opinion and not give you a platform to stand.
Oh, yeah.
Mikael Granlund. Why in the hell would you pick him as the best option, JR?
Yeah, I don't know that I would, and you guys saw the byline on the story, and I heard you read Dom's analysis of Granlund. He's the guy, when I did the bold predictions at the beginning of the year or mid-year, I said that maybe he's a guy that they go get for the stretch run. I don't think he's a guy that I get moving forward. I just don't know that he fits what they're doing right now, and I think that while he is a veteran player who can come in and help you out, does he make complete? Who could? So if I wrote that somewhere recently, sometimes you write those things and then they put them in the athletic.
JR,
and that's
what you said.
No. I have mentioned him as a guy, but I guess what I'm saying is, sometimes what happens is you write those things, you turn them in, and 2 weeks later,
they took your words from 3 months ago and said, JR thinks this is the best option. That's a trash move there, JR. Don't let him do that to you.
No, so I understand where you're coming from, but listen, I'm not as down on him as what you said about Dom. I just think with the age and with some of the issues, that could be a problem. So, did I write that he could be a good option? Yeah, but in terms of the best option, I think there'd be some question marks, and I think there's some other guys out there that could be, better for that spot.
You think Pius Suter would be better, right?
No, trash.
Well, we've read a little bit on him too this past couple of weeks too, and I mentioned his name to you guys last week, and I do think that he could be a guy, because look, those, again, going back to those prices, they're going to be astronomical, and we can talk about the trade route being a better situation, but those aren't always guarantees, and you got to fill some spots this year. You got to fill that center spot, and if other teams aren't willing to make a trade with you, and you're not able to sign those top end guys, a Suter, Granlund, those are the types of guys that you're going to have to look at.
JR, we appreciate the time as always, man. Thanks so much for hopping on with us today. We enjoyed the piece. People can read it in its entirety over at The Athletic. It's a piece, a Q&A with the Blues chairman, Tom Stillman. JR, appreciate the time as always. We'll talk with you again next week, my friend.
Yep, sounds good.
See you, buddy. You got it. That's Jeremy Rutherford joining us as he does each and every Tuesday here on BK and Ferrario. Appreciate his time as always.
Now it's going to sound like I was crapping on JR. He knows that I don't do that. He knows I love him.
I feel like he knows where we're coming from.
He knows we love him.
Yeah, he's the absolute best.
I think his thoughts on Granlund is why I'm just not sold on Suter. And really the free agent market, because that's where I'm coming from. When there's not a lot of options available to you, a majority of the teams have to go to that next tier.
Correct.
And the center position is what everybody wants. And if Granlund's not a center, if a lot of teams view this as he's not the center, then Pius Suter's going to be the guy that everyone's like, cool, this is the next best option, and we need a center. And I don't know if the Blues are in a we need situation.
And that's where we differ. Like a lot of us, or a lot of our opinions on the players are pretty similar. Honestly, it just becomes a question of A, value. How do you value this player? And B, need. Do you think the Blues need to upgrade at third line center? Or do you view this as a, hey, we can get by. We'll be fine with Sonny, and then we can reassess this at the deadline if we need to. I would view it as, hey, man, if I don't have to trade assets for a third-line center at the deadline, that's ideal. So let's go ahead and make this move now, either via trade or free agency, to stabilize ourselves in that spot. I do think they need a third-line center. I don't think you want to go into this upcoming season with Oscar Sundqvist as your third-line guy again. I think you're playing with fire, and you're just waiting, A, on him to get hurt, and then you've got Radek Faksa potentially moving up. And then you've got Nathan Walker, like you're breaking up that WTF line potentially. Or B, he's just not as good as he was a year ago. And now you've seen a little bit of a decline from a player that was already probably a bit qualified to be that third line center. That would make me very nervous heading into the season. So could they do it? Sure. And then maybe they could get away with it again. But for me, I would feel much more comfortable if they could go out and get somebody that stabilizes that third line, whether that's Suter. Granlund would be like, I mentioned this to you off air. If they do the Alex Ferrario plan of waiting, let's see where Mitch Marner goes, and then if he goes to a team that needs to clear some cap space, we can go trade with that team for a center. And then, he doesn't sign with that team. Now there's no centers available. Granlund's still out there. Okay, I would turn my attention to Granlund, maybe on a one-year flyer deal where he's trying to reset his market for next year. That's the kind of thing that I would do with him. But otherwise, yeah, like Suter makes some sense to me. Going to the trade market and trying to acquire somebody that upgrades there, that makes a lot of sense to me. It's just a matter of finding the guy. And it's not easy to do right now, man.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
That's the hard part. And the hardest part about it is there's some that you don't even know if they're available, because once Marner signs, once Bennett signs if he goes to the market, once Tavares signs once he goes to the market, the teams that signed those guys are going to have to make other roster moves, because they're going to have to move guys out, move cap out.
No guarantee of that, though.
No, there's no guarantee. But like the reports are of Marner potentially being connected to Vegas, Vegas doesn't have money. If Tavares goes to the market, or if Bennett goes to the market, and a team like Ottawa looks at it, or the Rangers look at it and say, we need to get better, well, they have to ship money out. Now, maybe that means it's a contract that you don't want to take on, and it takes you out of the bidding wars. That's what Doug Armstrong, in my opinion, is so good at compared to other GMs. He waits to see an opportunistic moment to pounce.
The problem with doing that, because I agree with you, I think he's very good at it. The downside in this offseason is if you're wrong, if they don't sign with those teams, if they end up going to, like, instead of Marner going to Vegas, let's say he goes to, I don't even know who another team would be in this category, but he ends up in Carolina. They have zero cap issues. Zero. They just give him the biggest deal. They want a superstar. They've been trying to do this for a while, and they finally found one, and he's willing to take their money. Well, now you waited, and you thought you were potentially going to have an availability there with the Vegas Golden Knights, and now they don't have anything for you, and now you're sitting here. And you have to be open to that. That is the downside to going that direction. And if you're cool with it, and Alex, you're cool with, hey, Sonny's going to be our third line center. I'm comfortable with that. We tried it. It didn't work. And now we kind of assess our team as we get closer to the deadline. You just have to be comfortable with that. And that's where I'm not. I'm not comfortable doing that going into this offseason. And that would make my opportunity shortened to be able to find an answer. Mine's probably got to be done by July 1st, whereas yours, You've got more runway, but the downside to it is you end up where you are today.
And that's the weird part because, like, for me, July 1st is not even in the options. Because if you're signing a guy on July 1st, you are overpaying. Because the reason that player...
You can go to the secondary. The Cardinals always do this, right? Where they jump the market to go get Kyle Gibson.
The pros of the secondary market, the Cardinals.
Oof. Yeah, some teams just sign those like lower end players on day one, so that way they know those players are targeted.
You got to hope that that player wants to be in St. Louis.
Well, that's part of why you do it, right? You say, hey, these other teams, they're talking to John Tavares today. They're talking to Sam Bennett. They're talking to these top end free agents. We want you. And we're willing to do this on day one. You don't have to wait. We're ready to do this right now. And that's, I think, why some teams target that mid-tier free agent early on in free agency. So that way they feel the love.
Yeah, and I feel like Suter's going to be outside. I think he's going to be closer towards the tier 1 market because there's not a lot of center options out there. And that's the problem with this market.
No doubt.
Once you get past Suter, there's nothing that you want. Like you're taking chances on everything once you get past Suter.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, questions and answers coming up next. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. People get mad at us for this sometimes, Alex, and I do apologize.
Did we change our opinion on something?
No, we shortchanged our questions and answers again. We went a little bit long in a segment with Jeremy Rutherford. So I do apologize. We'll do 5 minutes here. We'll try to get you more time for questions and answers tomorrow. That's on me. I got to be better. All right, from the 618. Guys, what's the Cardinals' plan for an external superstar now that Devers is off the board? They don't have one currently in the organization, and it's hard to strike gold in drafting. We're going to talk about this more extended coming up in the next segment, but, I mean, the easiest answer to this is Kyle Tucker. All you have to do is give him the money.
All right.
Okay, you said easiest.
So that's not happening.
Open up the wallet.
And that means you have to go the harder route, which is either draft and develop or make a trade for somebody. Yeah. It's not an easy thing to do.
And I don't think you have time to wait for the draft and develop because those things take time. And by the time you hope you're in a winning window, that player's not developed and the players that you already have are aging out of their cheaper deals. I think you got to make a trade. I think you got to go out there and you swing a deal like the Cubs did or like the Giants just did. The problem is you got to have it for the right position because there's only a couple of positions that are available for the Cardinals.
All right, from Magic Beans. Guys, minus the playoff track record, why wasn't the Blues' top target John Tavares? Explain that to me. I mean, he might be their top target. We don't know.
I actually think he's a prime target for the Blues. He's an older player that's not going to require many years, and it's a placeholder, and he's got elite ability. Like
I would be thrilled if they signed John Tavares to like a 3-year deal.
I always use the Joe Pavelski comp. Pavelski signed with the Dallas Stars. That was the best thing that could have happened for Dallas. It put them in a winning window because they got a guy that was looking to go somewhere and win and just be a guy. And that's what Tavares is.
Imagine if I told you, Alex, the Blues this offseason will sign a player that's, you can write it in pen, will score 30-plus goals for you next year on the second line.
Win.
In.
Yeah.
You're a playoff team.
Yeah.
Like the written in pen in playoff ink.
And he's going to get the best out of the guys around you, which might make two wingers 25-plus goal scorers.
Yeah, and you've got playoff performers around him, which I think is a really big deal. You can have a guy like Dylan Holloway on a line with John Tavares instead of him dealing with a bunch of other guys that play similarly to him.
And he's not relied upon to be the go-to guy with Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs. You put him in a line with Thomas and Shen, man, that's a guy that capitalizes on 15, 16 minutes a night.
I think he'd probably be your second-line center playing with Kyrou and Holloway, and you say, go get it. And then Shen ends up as your third-line center in this scenario.
Neighbors and Bolduc.
That's a pretty damn good playoff line. I'll tell you that much. Yep. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Guys, if the Panthers were to hoist the cup tonight, besides McDavid and Draisaitl, what would Edmonton give up for a playoff goalie this offseason? Man.
Well, they're not going to give up Bouchard because Bouchard's a key component of that team. The real answer is I don't think they have enough to give up for a elite goaltender. They have nothing in their prospect pool.
They're the team that should try offer sheeting Hofer and giving him way more money than he should otherwise get.
The way that they have to do it is they got to go sign a guy via free agency.
Good luck.
Yeah. I mean, they got to do what, the Panthers did it with Bobrovsky. Now, it took them 8 years into his contract to get to this point, but they gave him, I think it was like 10 by 10, just because they knew they needed a guy that could get them there at some point.
The hard part is if you're the Oilers, you're in a cap crunch. You've got Bouchard, who's an RFA this offseason.
Yeah.
He's 25 years old. If you're planning to do a long-term extension with him, I can tell you this, it ain't going to be $4 million.
No, starting point is 9.5.
Yeah, so that's basically your cap. So you have no flexibility going into the offseason. It's tough. When you've got two guys that make $26 million combined, things get tight very quickly in the current cap situation. It's worth it because you have the two best players in the world, and they're worth every penny. But you got to get a McDavid extension done this offseason. You've got to figure out what you're going to do with Evan Bouchard. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. Yeah. They've got to develop or trade for a goalie, most likely.
And the problem with all of this is none of the other moves matter if you don't have a goaltender because you're in this position. You might get to the Stanley Cup Final again. You might get to the Western Conference Final again. But guess what? Your shortcoming is because you don't have a goaltender that can make the save.
They're where the Avs were. The Avalanche, to me, are the comparison because the Avs did not have that franchise goalie. And then they just cycled through guys, and finally one of them hit. And it led to them winning a cup. So that might be the plan is you just keep churning through. You can't. I will say this. I don't know that you can live the Stuart Skinner life again of him being your clear-cut, no doubt about it, number one goalie. You got to go into next year with somebody else that at a minimum competes with him for that job.
Yep.
and you find out where that takes you. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Guys from the 314, do you think the Panthers or Oilers win tonight? And do you think Oklahoma City will end up having to go to a Game 7? Will Indiana win Game 6?
6 is going back to Indiana, correct? I think Pacers win. I think the Oilers actually win tonight. But I still think the Panthers win. I've said it all along. This is going 7. I think the Panthers win in 7.
I think OKC wins in 6. I think the Oilers force a Game 7.
I think the Panthers finish it off tonight. I think they continue to get ahead early on, and then I think they just close this one out. And then I said yesterday I thought the Pacers would force a Game 7. I don't think that anymore. Tyrese Halliburton's clearly injured, and it's affecting his play a lot. So I think OKC will finish it off in 6.
Somebody asked about us getting a specific guest on. I will tell you this. We've got a pretty good guest list coming up. We're hoping to have Mo on at some point this week. We are expecting
Friday.
to have, probably because I'm out. We're expecting to have Brant Brown, the Cardinals hitting coach, tomorrow on the show. We will have Jim Bowden, former Major League Baseball general manager, on the show tomorrow as well. We are efforting Nick Kiprios, so we've got a lot of good stuff coming up here for you guys.
Thomas Drance to tell us why they shouldn't sign Pius Suter.
Yeah, we got a lot of good stuff coming up here on this show. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we've got Bet It or Forget It. But next, the Cubs took the leap from good to great. How do the Cardinals follow that lead? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. All right, so T-Bone brought something up today. T-Bone brought something up to us today prior to the show. And Alex, I got to be honest with you. I was like, I don't think there's anything here for us to talk about. And then as we continued to discuss it, I think there is absolutely something here for us to discuss. So he brought up this piece. It's by Neil Payne over at The Athletic. History says one of these 5 teams should win the World Series. Now, the criteria that they use for this, you can take it or leave it.
It's wacky.
There's a lot of stuff where it's like, okay, so good teams will win the World Series. Yeah, that actually checks out. I agree with that. So they have a bunch of different factors. Here's one of them. You have to rank among the top 13 in 2 of the following 3 categories: win percentage, run differential, wins above replacement.
Hold on. So they win.
Be good.
They win more and score more runs than the opposition?
Yeah, which typically will lead to you having a higher wins above replacement.
I've been betting all along the wrong way.
Factor number 2, you need to be in the top 17 in on-base percentage or top 11 in slugging percentage.
So you either get on base or you hit the ball over the wall.
Yeah, turns out that's a really important factor. Factor number 3, you need to rank among the top 11 in opposing batting average against or top 16 in whip, walks, hits per innings pitched.
So your pitching needs to be top 10.
Yes, at least top half of the league.
I am going to win so much money betting.
The next factor, rank among the top 13 in quality starts or fewest meltdowns.
I want to know what the meltdown stat is.
Yeah, I don't know. But apparently it's a stat that is really important, and the 2011 Cardinals did not qualify. They were the one team in the last 25 years that was like 23rd in quality starts, and apparently they were last in meltdowns that season. Again, I don't know what that means, but
this is, I just looked this up on Chat GPT. This is going to be Alex's favorite stat now. It is tracked using win probability added. A meltdown is recorded when a pitcher has a WPA of minus 0.06 or worse in a single game.
There you go.
For a reliever. There you go.
So they got it
so much.
Let me put it a different way.
Oh, God.
Probably terms that you can understand. When John Gant started going in the wrong direction, those were meltdowns. Instead of him wiggling out of all of those jams, here comes 7 runs in the 4th inning. That's the meltdown.
You want a more modern one? When Ryan Fernandez came out of the bullpen.
There you go. That's a good one. That's a good example.
Those weren't meltdowns. Those were blow-ups.
All right, so that's another Factor 5. Check at least 4 of these 5 boxes. I'm not mentioning them. There's just a lot of stuff that you have to be good at. Who's left? There are 5 teams, according to The Athletic, that can win the World Series based on their criteria this season. Astros, Cubs, Padres, Tigers, Yankees. In other words, really good teams. But the Cubs' inclusion on this, Alex, I think is really interesting.
Hold on. Can we just appreciate the fact that 4 of these 5 teams are all division leaders?
Yeah.
That's a good pick. And they didn't pick
Who's picking a wild card team to win?
The Padres over the Dodgers, which is just, we got to put an underdog in there. Okay, go ahead, BK.
And the underdog is 39-32, and they come into the season as one of the favorites to win the World Series. So, yeah.
Checks out.
The piece, I think, leaves a little bit to be desired, but it got us to a place that we could talk about. Okay, so the Cubs are one of the 5 teams, in this man's opinion, based upon obviously objective criteria. No doubt about that. The Cubs can win the World Series according to at least these metrics. We came into this season, Alex, and we thought, okay, well, the Cardinals' path to getting into the playoffs, the easiest one, the clearest one, is to win the division. Because the bar's not going to be set that high. Because look at these teams. They're all a bunch of crap, right? Well,
look at these teams.
Apparently, one of them had a glow up in the offseason. The Cubs. They went from good to potentially great this year. They're 44-28. They have a better record right now than the LA Dodgers, and they're a half game back of the New York Mets. This team's up there with the best of the best right now. At some point, we have to give them their flowers for doing so. So, when you think about that, twofold, Alex. 1, are you believing it? And 2, what does that mean for the Cardinals and how they can catch up to where the Cubs are currently at?
I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that the Cubs can win the World Series, but you can't deny what's right in front of you. And their offense has been really good, and despite losing one of their top pitchers, they've still been effective in finding ways to win. What I make of it is the Cardinals are one move away from being the Cubs, in my opinion. They made the move for Kyle Tucker in the offseason, and it went from being a team that was average that maybe could make the playoffs to a team that now looks like the best team in the NL Central and can potentially win the World Series. I mean, they won 83 games last year. And you know what the difference in their roster is? Carson Kelly and Kyle Tucker. Now, Pete Crow Armstrong has been awesome, but I could relate that a little bit to Kyle Tucker. You bring in a guy that's supposed to be the star, the guy that carries the load of being the face of the team and performs in it. All the other guys around you, the complementary pieces, they're not having to be the stars. Dansby Swanson doesn't have to be the face of the Cubs.
I would also add, like, he took that leap, right? We see this all the time.
Sure.
First-year player, well, we don't see it here, but a lot of the time.
When have you seen it
We
here?
see it on other teams, and it makes you be like, why can't we have
other
this?
teams. Mason Wynn kind of did this. Mason Wynn went from
Herrera's doing it.
Could not hit the baseball in his first opportunity at the big league level, and people were like, oh boy, what happened here? And then year 2, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is at least league average hitter. Now, Pete Crow Armstrong went from like really bad to MVP candidate overnight, which is a slightly bigger jump, but he had the jump that we saw from Mason Wynn nonetheless.
But I also think a lot of that comes with having somebody that takes the pressure off of that player. A 23-year-old doesn't have to be and put up Kyle Tucker numbers. He can just go out there and play baseball. Like, it really feels like what's missing in this recipe is that middle of the order bat, which Captain Obvious statement right now, you're missing your Kyle Tucker move. And what sucks about it is Rafael Devers could have been it if he played a different position.
They also completely overhauled their bullpen. They only have, I think it's 2 holdovers from last year to this year in their bullpen, so that's another part of this. But yeah, the lineup is the biggest thing. And the biggest change in their lineup is twofold. 1, Pete Crow Armstrong took that step. And 2, the bigger one, they made the deal for Kyle Tucker. And Alex, this is what I wanted to get into with you guys, because as I look at the Cardinals lineup compared to the Cubs lineup, it doesn't stack up. The Cardinals lineup right now is not as good as the Cubs. However, if I flipped Tucker from the Cubs to the Cardinals, we would be saying the exact same thing in reverse.
Yep.
If you change nothing else, and I just said, hey, Kyle Tucker is now taking the spot of Jordan Walker, who has the better lineup. Like, you flip those 2 players. Tucker is on the Cardinals, he's in right field now here, and Walker is now on the Cubs, he's in right field there.
Cardinals
lineup is significantly better than the Chicago Cubs. I'll go through this. Again, taking away the top hitter from either side. So you just like start with the second best hitter on the Cubs, and then you start with Herrera, who in this scenario, he is the best hitter on the Cardinals, but in this scenario would be the second best hitter on the Cardinals. Pete Crow Armstrong versus Herrera. Push, probably.
Probably.
As pure hitters, not as overall players. Suzuki versus Contreras. Push.
In
This
theory,
year, Suzuki has been better than Contreras
I'd
overall.
give the slight edge to Contreras just in terms of the overall factor, but if you're going off of this season.
I'd give the edge to Suzuki, but I think it's close.
Okay. Michael Busch versus Brendan Donovan.
Oh,
Same, basically.
I would take Busch. I think he's a better middle of the order bat.
Happ versus Newt, pretty similar.
Yeah.
I would take Happ.
Swanson versus Wynn, pretty similar. Horner versus Burleson, pretty similar. Yeah. Like, you're looking at it, and the rest of the lineup, at worst, are comparable, and you could make a pretty strong argument in favor of the Cardinals if you really wanted to. Tucker's the difference. And this is where we get to what we've been saying all along, Alex. The Cardinals are missing their dude. They're missing the number 1 guy. I didn't mention, by the way, Arenado, which speaks to where we're at. They are missing the number 1 guy that takes all of the pressure off of everybody else. The ironic part about this is if they added Goldie or Arenado, like prime version of those players, to this lineup, man, I think they could be in a really good spot. The problem is they added those guys back in a situation where they didn't have the depth that they currently are able to boast with their lineup, so you're stuck.
Yeah.
They keep doing this thing where they swing the pendulum from one side to the other. They have stars but no depth in the lineup, and then they don't have the pitching side of things. Earlier in the mid-2010s, they have the pitching, but man, you don't have the lineup, and you miss those stars. Like, they're just always missing something. There's that one piece that they don't have that could unlock the entire roster, and right now, I think it's really 2 pieces. They're missing the number 2 starter to become a championship contender, and they're missing this guy in the middle of their order. Here's the problem, Alex. I like presenting issues and then presenting a solution. I don't know what the solution is here. I don't know how you fix this.
Yeah, because of the unknown solution, I don't know the player you can acquire because there's just not a lot of these guys available. And when they become available, you have to ask the question, does he fit into where the plans are at with the Cardinals? Somebody's upset that I said that you can't bring Devers because of the positioning and says, positioning doesn't matter with Devers. He's a perfect DH. That's fine, but you've got like 3 guys that only can play DH on this team. You got to have a guy who fills a void for you right now, and the weakest spots are one of the corner outfield spots. It's either Walker or Newbar. Everything else is pretty much filled. But the corner outfield spots are a dime a dozen in terms of the middle of the order impact bat that can play good defense for you in the outfield.
Yeah, you're either going to have to develop this guy internally because you're not going to go out there like Tucker, for example, if he hits the market, first off, Cubs are stupid. But second, if he hits the market, what you have to do is win a bidding war between the big boys, right? This isn't winning a bidding war between like the Reds when they were like negotiating for Sonny Gray and the Braves. This is negotiating, hey, we've got to outdo our offer compared to the Yankees, compared to the Mets, compared to the Dodgers potentially if they elected to get in on that market. Like, you're just not going to be able to do that as the St. Louis Cardinals. So then it just comes down to, do you, and maybe some people would hate the way that I would frame this, but do you kind of luck into the star, right? Do you just happen to find the one guy that gets disgruntled in a spot and ends up moving on and he's got the long-term contract that you're willing to do? That's how they got Arenado. Or do you end up getting the guy that's a little bit older on the aging curve and he's near an expiring contract, and you go out and get that guy and convince him to sign the contract extension? That was the Paul Goldschmidt. But those don't happen every year, right? Those are like
and
once
you have
every
to get it
5
in the right
years.
spot where your team's ready to win, and that guy's in
You
fresh.
have to be the one that has the best offer and that guy wants to go to.
And see,
all of these things have to add up at the same time.
When would you guys say, and I know, T-Bone, you don't like this idea, so you're not in this. When would you say Kyle Tucker became a superstar? Because you don't think he is a superstar.
Was it 20?
Would you say it was 2022 or 2023? Because his
I gotta go back and look at the timing.
So he was 20 in 21 was when he had a 147 OPS plus.
2021 is when I would say he.
But to me, it kind of felt like, okay, let's see that again. So my whole point with this is, let's say 2022 is when you're like, okay, this guy is going to be a star.
Sure. I mean, if I feel like if you hit 30 home runs and 100 ribbies and you steal 25 bags, you're a superstar.
Tyler O'Neill did that.
He did not.
Well, he didn't steal the bags, but
he did not do all of those things. I don't think he had the 100 RBIs either.
I thought he did. I mean,
I don't think he did. I think
I
he
don't
got
think
to
Tyler
80,
O'Neill
90.
ever got to.
No. The reason I'm asking that is because he was drafted in 2015. Whether it's 21 or 22, it took you either 6 or 7 years to get him to that point.
Totally.
6 or 7 years from now, all of these guys on the roster that are the perfect complementary pieces, and look, the Cardinals churn these players out. This is not a thing that they're bad at, but by the time you get that player, you might be lacking in 5 other areas. So it kind of does feel like you've got to strike at the right time to get the right pieces when your roster is ready to compete.
Yeah, the difference between him and Tyler O'Neill is twofold. One, the consistency. Starting in 2020 with the COVID season, he was just a great bat. He was a great bat that year, followed it up with an even better season, and then followed it up in 2022 with a 30 and 125. That slash line, 30 homers, 100 ribbies, 25 stolen bases. Okay, yeah, you've arrived. You're a superstar. Beyond that, he's healthy. He played in 58 games in the COVID season, 140 in 21, 150 in 22, 157 in 23. He had one season. It was the outlier season last year where he was not healthy for the Astros, and now he's come back and he's played in 71 games so far this year for the Cubs. Like, this guy, if the Cardinals went out this offseason and said, you know what, we're making him a $500 million man, I would say, good for you.
Yeah.
You did it. You did the thing. Is this contract going to age gracefully? No, probably not. You'll get to the back end of that contract and say, like, oh boy, we lack flexibility right now because of that contract that we signed back in 26 and it's 2035 now. Sure, you live with it. You deal with that on the back end because of what could be there for you on the front end. So I'd be all in favor of it. Do I think the Cardinals are likely to do that, though? No, it's very unlikely. These probably head into, like, New York. One of the New York teams or L.A. This is what happens.
The Dodgers, not the
Angels.
Angels.
This works. Yeah. I mean, maybe the Angels, though.
No, not
you know
the
what's
Angels.
frustrating to me, though, Alex? The Cubs, like, their last real effort with that core group of players was 2018. That was their last push with that group. They have since been meandering in the wilderness, basically the same as the Cardinals. They haven't gone to the playoffs as often as the Cardinals have, but they've been kind of around that 80 to 84 range in terms of the wins, and they're already back to championship contention.
One move, man.
Already back. And it's been an incredibly frustrating 5 to 6 years, just like the Cardinals, and guess what? They got back. And it's because they made the aggressive move that you lacked. If we're a player in his prime, I should add that caveat, because the Cardinals have had aggressive moves with Arenado and with Goldie. Those are similar to this one, but this was for a dude in his prime. We'll see what they do next. They've got to keep him, and that's something that I'm not at all convinced that they're going to do, but they made the big move this offseason that put them into championship contention, and there's a lot of credit that's deserved for that. I would say the same thing is true for the Giants.
Yeah.
I don't know how this thing's going to go with Devers. 5 years from now, it might be a disaster, but I respect the hell out of them being willing to do it, because it is something that at least puts you into the conversation right now, and it gives you the thing that you were severely lacking prior to. He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Better to Forget It is next.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Classic Air Care. If you're in the market for a new HVAC system, then they are the company you need to call, because trust is so important when it comes to this. Whether they're keeping units old or, in my scenario, where you're purchasing one, you've got to make sure you've got the right technicians coming out that aren't doing the upselling you on everything, making sure you're getting the biggest and brightest things when it comes to your HVAC system. No, you want one that can keep your house cool, and that's where Classic Air Care, I urge people to check it out, because our unit went out about 6-7 months ago in the middle of winter. So we called up Classic Air Care and had them come out and check out the unit and walk us through. And the best part about it was the technician that was out, Roger, he walked around and he pointed out certain things that were still usable on our HVAC system versus stuff that was just old, worn down, and needed an upgrade. And it saved us a little bit. Plus, the financing options. Nobody can fork over that amount of money for an HVAC system. Classic Air Care has financing options for you. So check all of those out. It's actually a really simple thing to do on the website as well. You just click a couple of questions, answer them, and they will send you an instant quote of what your HVAC system would be. Check them out. Schedule online. Just tell them Alex Ferrario sent you at Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
Ooh, hoo, hoo, hoo. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on 101 ESPN. I'll start out with this one for you, boys. Bet it or forget it. Wilson Contreras will be the third Cardinals player to finish with at least 100 RBIs in a season since Matt Holliday did it in 2012. The only players that have had at least 100 ribbies in a season for the Cardinals since 2012, Nolan Arenado, he did it in 21 and 22, and Paul Goldschmidt in his MVP season in 2022. Bet it or forget it, Wilson Contreras will add himself to that list by the end of the year. He's currently on pace for 101. He has 45 through the first 68 games.
I'm going to say forget it because of this cold spell that the offense is in. I think they right this ship, but at what time and how many guys ride it at the same time? And that's obviously going to stun his opportunity. I think he gets close, but I don't think he gets to 100. So I'll say forget it.
I think your belief in this really comes down to your belief in Nootbaar. Because he's the guy that's got to score a bunch of runs because he's going to get on base at such a high clip. him and Mason Wynn. Mason Wynn has 41 runs scored this year. Lars Nootbaar has 39. They're the top two on the team. If they don't get back going offensively, he's not going to be able to.
Or you put Victor Scott at the leadoff spot.
It's another option that some have suggested. I don't think that's a very good idea.
Why, man?
Well, he's going through just as big of a slump as Lars Nootbaar, so that would be why. For me.
Agreed.
Tone.
Here's one thing that I struggle with. Who was the last guy to drive in 100 runs and hit like 20 or fewer homers? Because like he's on pace for just 20 home runs. That feels hard to do.
How many did Holiday hit that year?
27. Let me check.
I was gonna say I think that's got to be a
25.
low number. So that's why I'm gonna say forget it until maybe BK is like, oh, here's like 40 guys that have done it.
17 guys did it recently.
The last Cardinal to drive in 100 runs without hitting more than 20 home runs was who? What's your guess?
Say that again.
At least 100 ribbies, fewer than 20 home runs on the season. There's been one guy to do it for the Cardinals. I'll give you the time frame if you want. In the last 25 years. One player has done that for the Cardinals in the last 25 years.
Oh, man.
So it's a good point by you, T-Bone, because it's incredibly rare.
Renteria didn't drive in 100, did he? Is it Renteria?
Yep.
Wow.
2003, Edgar
call. I was gonna
Renteria,
say
13 homers, 100 ribbies. Brian Jordan drove in 104 in 1996 with 17 home runs. That is it in the last 30 years.
That was when baseball was real.
That's right.
That was
Back in the
baseball.
90s.
Yeah, that's
So,
why.
T-Bone, it's a good point. It's really difficult to accomplish.
That's why I would forget this, because I just don't know if he's going to have the home run power to really propel those numbers. So, yeah, I'll forget it. I can see where he gets close, like 85 to 90. I don't think he'll be at 100.
Yeah, nobody's as great as Edgar Renteria.
Alex, what do you got
Nobody.
for us?
All right, so we just came off of.
Sorry, I should answer this question
No,
myself.
we don't really care.
I will bet this.
It was Tone.
I will bet this. I think he gets there. By the way, the last player in Major League Baseball to drive in at least 100 with 20 or fewer home runs was Nomar Mazara for the Texas Rangers in 2017.
That dude.
I thought that guy was going to be a star.
I did too. I thought Mazzara was going to be the next big thing.
I don't think that team was very good. If I don't, because that
Mazzara was because I was
they
like,
were
ooh,
not.
Cardinals should
Yeah,
go
I
get
was
that
gonna
guy.
say, yeah.
I think he died off pretty
Brandon
quick.
Phillips did it in 2013. He's still with us. Adrian Gonzalez in 2012. Victor Martinez in 2011. Michael Young also in 2011. You guys may remember him from that season. Alex, what do you
Wow,
got for
I can't
us?
believe he did that.
Victor Martinez.
11 homers, 106 ribbies.
Wow.
For the Texas Rangers in
impressive.
2011.
Wild. Those teams were wild. All right, so we just
It
came
was
off
the
of
second time he had done it in his major league career. Alex,
we
sorry.
just came off of the superstar conversation on the baseball side. So of Kyle Tucker or Rafael Devers' measurement, bet it or forget it, the Cardinals are the next team to get a superstar compared to the Blues.
Bet it. Yeah. You're saying acquire, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unless you believe Thomas is already at that level.
No. And if we're talking about like acquiring a guy, Thomas wouldn't.
I
fit
just
into
mean
this
a
criteria.
part of their team. The next team to get a superstar to that level would be the Cardinals. Bet it or forget it. So it could already be on their roster.
So that's my thing. I think Ivan Herrera might be it, man. I really do. He's going through a slump right now. He's above league average offensively. This is his slump. I think he's more likely to become a superstar in that area. Like, if Devers can be a superstar, and it's purely based on hitting, Devers is not a superstar at anything else. He's a bad base runner. He's bad defensively. He's kind of Soto-ish in that regard. Soto does one thing at an elite level, and it's the bat. Walks plus hits. Like, that guy is unreal. And Devers is not to his level, but that's where he wins. Herrera can be that. Not to the same degree as both of those players, but he could be a star-level bat. So I think Herrera is the most likely player of anybody currently in St. Louis to take that step. And I would say the Cardinals are more likely to acquire a player externally than the Blues are. That is a star. So I'll say the Cardinals are the team. Bet it.
I think I would forget it because I think Thomas could get there. Thomas, if healthy, can put up a 100-point season. I think that puts you in that superstar category. And I think he'll establish that first before Herrera can, because it's a chance that Thomas does it this coming season. Herrera needs to not just continue to play well this year, you got to repeat it next year. And that's where it just comes down to the timetable, to where I would more likely think that it could be Thomas that ends up
Yeah, and the
getting
reason
there.
I brought this up is because I'm thinking it's like, okay, well, you got Weatherholt, and you got this next pick. Could one of these guys become those superstars? But, like, off of what they already have, I'm in the same line of thinking as T-Bone. I think Thomas is already there, and I don't know with Herrera. And in terms of acquisition, I think I would still take the Blues because I don't know if the Cardinals are doing it other than a draft pick.
Guys, bet it or forget it. Brendan Donovan will be the lone representative at the All-Star game for the St. Louis Cardinals. Yesterday, the first round of ballots came out. Brendan Donovan was the only Cardinal in the top 5 from the position players.
I'll bet it. They're not going to get a pitcher in. There's nobody worthwhile. I thought that maybe Libby could have been one of those guys. Maybe you could have made an argument coming into the season, certainly, for Ryan Helsley, but his numbers are not at that level anymore. And there's nobody else hitting-wise that would be up to snuff in that regard. Donnie is your guy. I think he's probably going to be your lone representative, especially with Mason Wynn going through a slump that he's been in lately. He could have been your other representative position player-wise as well, but he's not hitting enough right now.
Yeah, same. I think it's Donovan. You've nobody on the pitching side. Ryan Helsley has not been good enough to get those votes, and nobody on the position player side. So I'm forgetting it or betting it.
Yeah, I agree. Bet it. I think it's just going to be Brendan Donovan. Herrera, I think if he hadn't missed that month, he'd be in the conversation, but because he missed that month, I think that's going to hurt him.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. By the way, Bobby Abreu, 5 seasons in his major league career of less than 20 homers and at least 100 ribbies. 5 seasons.
The home run derby where Bobby Abreu just kept mashing balls over the wall is still like stuck in my brain.
That's awesome.
Bobby Abreu, what a player.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line.
Right,
Bet It or Forget It, Sonny will be on the Blues next season.
Bet it.
I agree. Bet it.
Yeah. Even if they upgrade the center position, he's the 13th forward. They're moving on from Joseph or Texier before they're moving on from Sundqvist.
Agreed. Bet it or forget it, the Blues will trade pick 19 in a package for either a number 2 center or a right-handed defenseman.
I believe it. I don't think they're taking 19th overall, which is going to be wild because then they don't draft till the 6th round. Unless they trade that.
Boy, Army's going to be bored on draft day.
Unless they
trade that one as well.
You might as well.
Just take this draft
package
off,
the 25 draft for an upgrade.
Trade the 6th with Matthew Joseph and be like, yeah, somebody take this money.
I don't know how. I mean, maybe the Blues do take something depending on what the market level is, but like some teams that could trade centermen to open up cap space, they don't have draft picks in the first round. Like Vegas, to me, is a prime example. They don't have a draft pick until the 3rd round. Would they take a 19th overall pick as trying to shed salary? I'm going to bet it.
I'm going to forget it because the NHL is soft when it comes to these trades, man. They never make these deals.
Army's been close the last couple of years. He stood up from his table and he's had conversations.
Army's not soft. The rest of the league is soft. They're not making any of these deals with the draft day trades. It's weird, man. I don't understand why it is so difficult in this specific league to move first-round picks nowadays, except for at the deadline. Deadline, everybody's wheeling and dealing with their picks.
Yeah,
once you get closer to the day, though, dude, they had 3 first-rounders, and people were like, no, we're good.
Bill Guerin made waves at this past year's draft when he traded up to get that the first-round pick, the 12th overall, because you're right, it doesn't happen. Like, we were in Nashville waiting for it, and then you finally see it last year. No, not one pick got traded, and we thought with 3 of them that something was going to get moved.
Yeah, I would forget it as well, because that was exactly what I was thinking is the NHL, and I feel like you used to see that, maybe not on draft night, but like I remember when they made the Ryan Reeves trade. Who'd they get in that from?
From Costin.
Is that who they got?
Reeves went to Pittsburgh for.
Maybe that's not the deal I'm thinking of. They did make a move.
You're thinking of Jake Allen?
Are you thinking of Schenn? You're thinking of the Braden Schenn one.
Schenn was the one I'm thinking of.
It was
that was like 2 nights before
and
the
2
draft.
first-round picks.
Yeah,
no, that was the night of the draft.
Oh, was it?
That was the night of the draft.
Like, what the hell happened in NHL? BK's right. You guys are soft, except for Army.
Well, I think that's probably why it doesn't happen, because teams like Philly take Yori Laterra and multiple first-round picks for Braden Schenn.
Great trade. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to dive into the junk drawer. But next, do the Cardinals deserve credit for keeping their pitchers healthy, or is this just happen chance and they've been lucky this year? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals back in action tonight as they start a 3-game set at the Chicago White Sox. 6:40 will be first pitch. Matthew Liberatore will get the start for St. Louis. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, we've got Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final for you as the Panthers look to close out the Oilers and capture back-to-back Stanley Cups. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30 with puck drop at 7. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. SteamALondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, so how much credit do they really deserve for this? That's the question that we want to ask from you. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Alex, there was a great piece over on the St. Louis Post-Dispatch website earlier today by Derek Gould, and he did a lot of reporting on why the Cardinals have been able to stay so healthy this season when it comes to their pitching staff. Knock on wood, but so far this year, they've only had one pitcher. They only currently have one pitcher on the injured list, and that man is somebody that they weren't necessarily expecting to play into their 2025 plans at the major league level. That's Zach Thompson, who unfortunately just has not gone in his way over the last couple of years. Alex, they're doing this in a number of different ways. Like the whole piece is worth your time because it gets into all of this different stuff they're doing, but whether it be shorter starts, putting them on the 6-man rotation whenever they're in this extended stretch of games, or having the off day, like honoring the off day and then making sure they have that same amount of rest time between starts. They're going every 6 days instead of 5 days when it comes to their starters. Not pushing guys in the bullpen whenever they're, back-to-back. They're sitting that third day. You got 4 out of 5. All right, well, we're going to be off for like a series now with that guy. Even last week, it went under the radar, but T-Bone noticed this. Steven Matz with like 6 days between pitching. He was not hurt, but my understanding is he was just, a little sore. And so they gave him a little bit of time off. They were able to cover it with their other guys. That's something that this staff has done a really good job of. So whether you want to say that is the sole reason why the Cardinals have stayed healthy, or you think it's like 5% of the reason, it is a reason why they've been able to stay healthy, because this happened last year as well. And April is typically when you see the majority of the injuries. Now, I want to say full disclosure. I get so annoyed watching this in April. So annoyed. And it's something that I just can't help myself with because, especially with this team being where they're at, they have such a small margin for error. We're feeling it right now, where a couple of games in April could decide their fate at the deadline. And so it frustrates me to no end when they're in these moments, especially early in the season. It's like, dude, could you just leave Sonny Gray in there? He's got 70 pitches. You're in the 6th inning. He's at 70 pitches. Please push him a little bit here. So it annoys me, but it's hard for me to argue with the results. So, Alex, for you, when you see all of this presented to you, the way that it was in Derek Gould's piece, are you convinced? Is this something that you think the Cardinals, their staff, their management, et cetera, deserves credit for keeping these guys healthy the way that they have?
It's a slice of the pie. I'm not going to give them saying, like, this is the reason that they've gotten to this point, and it's because they're being cautious and doing the 6-man rotation, because I think when you get this deep into the season, some of this is luck. Like, some of it you just luck into having guys that stay healthy, because most times than not, something gets pinched, something happens to where a guy goes down. But I do give them credit of finding ways to make sure that the group of players are getting enough rest so that those bad luck situations are less likely to happen in the season. If you give them rest, if you make sure they're not overworking it, well, then they're not going to break as fast as they would if they were going out there every 5th day and throwing 7 innings no matter what. And the fact that they were able to navigate this so much. Now, look, the pitching is kind of imploding right now, but I don't know if this is because of the 6-man rotation and extra rest. I think this is just the pitchers you have. The fact that they've been able to navigate it all the way up until the beginning or 2nd week of June and staying competitive and having a decent pitching staff, I will give them credit for that, because that's not an easy thing to navigate with the lack of depth that the Cardinals have.
I think there's something to this a little bit, to where I think it does help them out. But I think a lot of this is just luck, right? Like, we see teams try and do stuff all the time that maybe it's not a 6-man rotation, but they, limit innings on guys. And it still doesn't work, right? I remember us talking with Skip when he was manager of the Marlins. And we asked him, like, hey, Yuri Perez, everybody remembers him. He had that great first year when he came up, I think, 2023. And they were running on an innings limit with him, right? They were kind of going 5 and dive, no matter what the pitch count was. Hey, we got to limit the innings for him through starts. And he still blew out his arm. So I don't know how much of this is actually, hey, this is preventing injuries compared to, yeah, this is just luck. I think there is maybe something that does help them out in this regard. An extra day off maybe does help the starters, help with recovery as well. I also look at this team and go, man, they just don't have a lot of stuff, right? When you read all the reports of like what leads to the increase in injuries, it's throwing with velo. They don't have a ton of guys that throw extremely hard. And it's just the stuff, right? Putting that much pressure on the elbow. Even their most outside of like Sonny Gray, Ryan Helsley, nobody else really has something that is like a just dynamic wipeout pitch that I would think would put a ton of stress on the elbow. So that's another like tinfoil theory that I would throw out there as well.
Sliders. If you throw a slider, even if it's not crazy, it's going to hurt your arm. It's just not a natural thing to do, right? Like there's been enough research at this point that like throwing a baseball is bad for you. And doing it repeatedly, doing it 100 times every 5 days, like that's going to wear on you. And some guys it wears more than others. It's hard to know exactly what. There's been, God only knows how much money poured into this, and they can't seem to find any answers on it. Apparently, Major League Baseball had its own investigation into this in the offseason, and they basically were like, yeah, a lot of injuries. It's crazy. Not really sure what you should do about it, but there's a lot of them out there. Good luck, everybody. Hopefully we'll see you at spring training, and hopefully everything goes smooth this year. I think they do deserve some credit for this. Again, it annoys me in the beginning of the season when I see it. Like Eric Fetty would be an example of this, right? So Eric Fetty last year, my understanding is he was a little exhausted by the time that he got to the Cardinals. And some of that is probably the usage that he had while he was with the Chicago White Sox. Why not? Why not push him as hard as possible, right? When you look at the way that he was used through his first like 6 starts last year, he went 90-plus pitches in every single one of those starts. It was basically like, hey, boy, hit that ground running. We are getting you right up to midseason form in March and April. So hopefully everything's feeling good for you. Here in St. Louis, it was 73, 65, 88, 84 pitches in his first few starts of the regular season. Does that matter over the long haul? I can't imagine it matters zero, right? Like, T-Bone, you played tennis growing up. There would probably be days after a match where you're like, I am dog tired right now. Like, I'm just dead. And some days, the next day you wake up and you're like, I'm fine. Feel great. I could go out there and play another match today. And other days you wake up that second day and you're like, maybe it was a big match, it went long, whatever. You're like, dude, I am still like 50%. And if you tried to go out there, that would be the day, according to all of the research out there, like that would be the day where you're more prone to getting hurt. That doesn't mean you will get hurt, but you are more likely to get hurt on that day. And so I do think the Cardinals deserve a little bit of credit for saying on those days, we're going to stay away from that guy. You know, we're not going to go to that guy in this spot. Some of that is easier for them because this season was not all about winning. Like, it was also about runway. It was about finding out what you have. And so by staying away from somebody, you have to find out what somebody else is capable of doing. So it almost plays into what the stated goal was for 2025. It's a little harder when you're in the spot where you're really pushing in any individual season to do this, but I think they deserve a little bit of fortune or a little bit of credit for this, because 2 years of good fortune is, in Major League Baseball, pretty hard to come by. So I think some of this is planning. I think some of this at 25, 30, 40%, whatever you want to call it, they do deserve credit for that.
I do think a piece of the pie, though, is what T-Bone's saying. Like, sometimes if you've got guys that just have filthy stuff, they have weird arm mechanics. And those arm mechanics, they're going to get to you at some point. And maybe that's something that the Cardinals have. We talked earlier this week about taking shots in the drafts and going for guys that have that high-end strikeout stuff. Maybe that's a Cardinals philosophy of looking for less of that so that the guys stay durable a lot longer.
Yeah, the biggest predictor of future injury is past injury.
Yeah.
And guys that have that big-time stuff, smaller bodies, all of these different things, like mechanically, they're totally out of whack, whatever it might be, they're more prone to getting hurt in the future. And the Cardinals have very few of those guys. So there is something to that, T-Bone. I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm just saying I think it's all of this stuff, right?
I think it's like a spider web of this.
It's the lack of stuff. It's veteran starters that have been stable for most of their career and have built up this foundation of innings. They know how to prepare as well. I think that's part of this. Is like guys that have gone through this on a year in, year out basis. I think it was Michael Gersh who said, we need guys that can go pull to pull. And the Cardinals have those guys right now for the most part, and they're like top 3 in their rotation, which helps. That helps a lot. I think all of that's part of it. And I think another piece of the puzzle is their planning, their ability to get the most out of them while not pushing them too hard.
And I think the thing that makes it hard, and again, I'm not trying to say like, oh, this means nothing, this isn't helping them at all, because I think there probably is something to it is helping them stay healthy. The tough part for me, and this could just be because these guys don't have as good mechanics, but you know what they do in the minor leagues? They do a 6-man rotation. And we see that they have guys that deal with injuries all the time. Some of that is come of what you're talking about, past guys dealing with it. Like we've seen Roby's dealt with injuries in the past. Drew Rom is another guy that's hurt again. You look at Tink Hens. Tink Hens continues to deal with injuries, and he's on a 6-man rotation. Like that is what they are training them to do in the minor leagues, and it works out scheduling-wise because they play 6 straight days just consistently. But like that's a 6-man rotation
every week in the minor leagues,
right? But that's a 6-man rotation that they're going through. They're constantly doing the 6-man rotation. They're constantly getting that what the Cardinals have been doing, which is, hey, instead of starting every 5th day, you're starting every 6th day. And yet they still deal with
They
injuries
also
in the
have
minor
less
leagues.
information in the minor league level.
Sure.
They have less data on players. They have less ability to, like, some of the sports science stuff, we have no idea what they have behind the scenes on, like, soccer teams have a lot of this stuff. I'm sure you've read about this, T-Bone, where they can tell exactly when a player is reaching that, like, breaking point. They'll just take them off. So you're not training today. You're not playing this week. Like, you're off. We're going to get you back to where you want to be in your, like, it's like green zone, red zone, whatever. They want them to be in playing condition to be ready to go. They don't have that same stuff down at the minor league level right now. It's just not available because it's expensive to have all of that stuff. They have more of it at the major league level. So I think that plays into it as well. But yeah, T-Bone, like, they're doing some of this stuff at the minor league level as well. And they're not having the same amount of success at keeping those guys healthy. Quinn Matthews had the injury earlier this year. Tink Hens has been hurt. Cooper Jerpy, like some of their top arms have dealt with. TK Roby for the last couple of years has not been able to stay healthy. So it's not exclusively the planning. But what I do think is worth noting is that the planning allows for the rest. You can't have just one or the other, right? You've got to have all of this coming into combination. And when you have all of that in place, I think there have been some managers in the past that would not be having the same amount of success at keeping these guys healthy right now. I'm talking about Cardinals managers that would not have been as fortunate, if we want to call it that, with Fetty, Palante, Libby, Michaelis, etc. I think there would have been maybe some more injuries that they would have had to potentially deal with. Because I don't think they would have been handled the same way. I don't think Matheny handles Sonny Gray the same way that...
Matheny broke Bowman.
Yeah, I don't think he handles Sonny Gray the same way that Ollie Marmol has. I don't think that Mike Schiltz handles these guys the same way that Ollie Marmol has so far.
I think that's some just mindset, too, of like, you're the guy, you got to go out there. Whereas now you look at Sonny Gray and it feels like there is... We were complaining about this last year, a little bit of using it on eggshells, but it's understanding the circumstance. Those guys in the past may be like, look, if we lose that guy, oh well. Now it's like, if we lose this guy, we're bleeped. So we have to make sure he's available for us.
Junk Drawer coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about Rhino Shield. If you're looking for an update to the exterior of your home or your business, then look no further than Rhino Shield. You've heard me talk a ton about the business, the product that they use, a ceramic coating that sticks 8 to 10 times thicker than any paint you're going to buy at the hardware store, 100% waterproof, 90% deflecting of the UV rays. Basically, you're getting protection, the coating of a Rhino with Rhino Shield. But don't believe just me. Believe the over 1,000 comments and 5-star ratings over on Google Plus with Rhino Shield's work. Like this one from Carrie. Extremely satisfied with the work of Rhino Shield. While renovating an old metal building for our business, we wanted to give the outside a facelift. Aaron's bid was in line with the other exterior painting bids, so we chose Rhino Shield for the durability and longevity. No hard seller pressure. Scheduling was easy. Job was completed efficiently. Crew went above and beyond, pulling back rock to apply paint further down on the foundation and the ceramic coating on the doors. So many compliments we're getting from Rhino Shield. Give Darren a call today. Tell him Alex Ferrario sent you and give your home or business the facelift that it needs. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25RHINO.com.
Alongside Alex and T1, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. All right, let's dive into the junk drawer. Alex, how would you feel if you found out that you were married without your knowledge?
Well, I'd be very confused.
Yeah, a 36-year-old woman in
drinking
Texas
alcohol.
is being held on felony stalking charges in a bizarre case where her wedding was held without the groom present and without his knowledge. Okay, I'll go ahead and click on that link. Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Clickbait. Don't click on it, man.
The Beverly Hills police chief said his office was contacted by the 42-year-old man on Friday who said he found a package from his ex-girlfriend at his home that included a copy of a marriage certificate showing he is now married. The victim told police he had been in a relationship with the suspect and they had gotten marriage licenses around June 2nd, but they broke up prior to the wedding.
Oh.
The chief said that the investigation determined the woman had convinced a pastor to certify the marriage without the groom being present.
That's a red flag, ladies and gentlemen. I thought you were going to tell me like she forged his signature on a marriage certificate or something
I thought
like
it was
that.
just going to be like something that happened in Vegas because, you know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Can't finish that sentence from the movie.
How does a pastor certify that?
I have
A
no
corrupt
idea.
pastor.
Sir, I would like to get married today. Okay, well, where's the groom?
He's under the weather.
He's not going to make
Got to be a pastor that was a relationship
Okay.
with the girl.
That is...
It's got to be a guy that had a relationship with her. Yeah, allegedly.
This feels like one of those stories where we're missing a pretty decent amount of the context here.
Like the pastor's a friend.
Yeah.
That's what
That's what I would imagine. And feels bad for the girl or wants to help her out. It's like, we could do this still.
Yeah, this case to me is far more interesting about the pastor than it is the woman.
Well, and I also
It's
wonder,
just like a crazy person.
and I
right?
also wonder
This
if the
happens.
girl is telling a bigger lie of like, oh, he knows, he's blah, blah, blah. You know, like typically you see these things. These are always on the Netflix documentary of like faking some type of hospitalization for the other individual. And, oh, he knows, he's a part of it, I promise. But we just need to take care of this now because we've got other things to worry about.
The department, the police department said they're not releasing any of the information on who officiated the ceremony.
I smell Netflix documentary.
There's going to be a little bit more to the story that ends up coming out. I would
always love
imagine
that
as
one.
it goes.
What
to
would you
court.
do?
What do you mean?
Like, would you
do what this guy did.
Would you contact her and be like, "What the bleep," or would you just go straight for
You gotta
like,
go
"We
to
got to
police.
get this fixed"?
You're clearly not going to get anything handled by going to her.
Yeah.
She's the one that the crazy person sent you the marriage license.
This reminds me of the baby
She
reindeer.
didn't call you. She didn't text you. She just sent you the marriage license that said, "Congratulations, you're married now." Yeah, call the police.
I am so glad I've never had a stalker.
Coming up next,
That's
what is
wild.
leading to the drop in viewership in this year's Stanley Cup Final? It's been a great series. You've got stars on both sides of things. So why aren't people watching? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. All right, so why aren't people watching this year's Stanley Cup Finals? Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Alex, there was a piece over on The Athletic earlier today. I feel like we've referenced them a lot today. They've had some good articles.
Basically the home of The Athletic right here on 101 ESPN.
Yeah, lying. So there was a piece over on The Athletic. Richard Deitch wrote about the ratings and the decline that we're seeing in viewership this season, or this postseason, for this year's Stanley Cup Finals. Game 1, 2.4 million viewers. That was down from last year when 3.1 million viewers were watching. Game 2, it dropped about 1 million viewers as well, and that's continued the trend from last season in Game 3 and Game 4. Basically, every game you've had between 500,000 and 1 million viewers fewer than you had a year ago. It's worth noting, Canada does not play into these, right? So like the Canadian viewership, it's all on Sportsnet, not on TNT. So they do not play into this. So it's an apples to apples comparison from a year ago. It's the same teams that are represented. It was a well-viewed series a year ago, and now it's not. Some of this is very simple to explain, Alex. It's on Turner Sports right now. Last year was on ABC. So it's easier to consume ABC. Everybody gets it, no matter what. You just go get the digital.
Go get those rabbit ears.
Whereas Turner, you have to have cable in order to view it. Like T-Bone, you don't have Turner? Is that right?
No, not on my cable.
You have rabbit ears?
No. Instead of doing the old-fashioned rabbit ears, I go with the old
Can't you
HBO.
just picture T-Bone standing in front of his TV be like, whether I can't get this screen to go on.
100% can is the problem. So it's been a 20% decrease year over year, and that's part of it. It does not explain all of it, though. Alex, what do you think is going into this? What has led to a drop in viewership for a series that's been really great thus far? It has star power on both sides of things. How would you try to explain this?
I would explain it, and I said this prior to the series and why I wanted to see different teams. I think people don't like to see the same Stanley Cup Final matchup another year. I think they want something new. I think they want to see something new. Like, just go back through. Even if there's been a recurring team, like the Tampa Bay Lightning was for 3 straight years, you had Dallas, Montreal, and Colorado. You had a different team, and all 3 of those teams were teams that hadn't won the Cup in some time. Now, Edmonton is a team that is still looking for their first Cup since the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. The Panthers were just there, but I just kind of feel like the common hockey fan, like you've got the fan base that, of course, is the diehard of the team and they're watching, and then you get the diehard just hockey fan. The common hockey fan, man, if there's nothing new to this series, I don't know if I want to watch it.
See, I totally disagree because I think I am common hockey fan.
Yeah.
And the draw for me is, dude, the stars that I learned about last year, now I get to see them again. It's like a sequel to a movie that I loved. We're like, I watched Top Gun 2 the other night again.
Sequels are never good.
Yeah,
sequels are
Top Gun
never
2
good.
I thought was fantastic. It was really well done.
They needed 30 years between.
Yeah,
See,
and
if we
they
were
needed
30
9
years
Top
from last
Guns.
year, this would be great.
Yeah.
I feel like seeing Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl 30 years from now may not have quite the same
Yeah, never
effect.
mind.
I'd
Now,
be
to
in
be
on
fair,
that.
I'm not sure Tom Cruise quite has the same effect, but he's still doing his thing. The Oilers, though, in this series, like 2 of the most recognizable faces and names in the sport are involved. Matthew Tkachuk, probably, tell me if I'm wrong here, Alex, the current biggest star American-born player on an American team.
I'd agree
Is that
with that.
fair? Is that fair?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And he's going up against Edmonton? Like, dude, what more do you want?
Yeah.
Like, you wanted to see Carolina versus Dallas? That was going to get everybody excited? I can't
I don't know,
imagine.
man. I just think people like to see different teams. They like to see something new rather than the same thing.
I mean, maybe I'm the outlier here. I
see,
can only speak from my own perspective, but this is what I wanted from the very beginning, was to see these teams go back at it again. I know it's going to be a great series. There's star power on both sides. There's storylines galore. Like, we are already having people talk about, if Edmonton doesn't win this one, when are they going to get back? And does that mean that it's it for Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to potentially win one? I think that's crazy, but it's a conversation that people are already having. Sam Bennett's going on this historic run. The Florida Panthers just went for it in a way that we almost never see teams really go for it. They added a dude from the Boston Bruins who was hurt at the time, and Brad Marchand, who is a career pest. And then they added Seth Jones, who looked like a terrible contract. And they were like, yeah, that guy's going to be great here. He's been really good for them. So I can't ask for anything more from these playoffs. I think it's been spectacular theater. I can't wait for this thing to go 7. It's going to be awesome. But
Might be all this part of it. This is following the narrative, what I think a lot of people did believe, that Florida was the better team, maybe you get just dry with it. I don't know. I've enjoyed every second of this, but I'm the guy that loves the Stanley Cup Final no matter what. I don't care the team. I think these are the best games to play, but I don't know. It's just like if you look at the past Stanley Cup, it's rare you get two of the same teams in back-to-back years. You just always get a different team that's trying for something.
I've had a few people that say it's just too damn long. They need to wrap this series up by early June. Another one that says the time between the games has killed it for me. I think some of that, though, is like if you want the best version of hockey, you need this time off.
I do agree with this drags on. Like, people are just done with it.
But how do you avoid it?
Well, LeBron tweeted it, and LeBron has been making this case for a long time. You start the season earlier, you shorten preseason, you don't have an all-star break so that you wrap up the Stanley Cup by May 31st.
But if it's, sorry to interrupt, if it's the same length of the postseason, wouldn't you run into the same problems?
No, I think it's just going deeper into the offseason and into the summer.
But is that what they're talking about, or are they saying the playoffs last too long? Because if the argument here is that the playoffs last too long, there's no solution to that.
I think he was saying the regular season
the playoffs last too long because it goes too deep into the offseason.
Okay.
And LeBron's point is you don't have as long of a preseason, so the regular season starts earlier, which means the Stanley Cup's given out earlier.
I'm totally fine with that. If the argument, like this guy on the text line said the playoffs are too long. If you think the playoffs are too long, there is no solution to that. You're just not going to be somebody that's a consumer of it, and that's fine.
Yeah, they're all 7 games, and they're not changing that. They're not going to go to 3 games and then 5 and then 7.
Less money. And they're not going to have fewer teams, because that's the other thing you could do is just decrease the rounds. The number of rounds get fewer. Yeah, now we're once again
losing money.
Mm-hmm. And that's the opposite of what the intended effect is. Like, I think they're far more likely to increase the number of playoff teams and increase the amount of time that the playoffs take before they would decrease any of that, because that's where your revenue comes in. That's the moneymaker that drives these contracts with ESPN and Turner. They want these games, and that's why the ratings do matter, is because the reason you pay for these games is the people that are watching, because that's how you sell the ad revenue.
I just think
you have to getting the same number of people.
I just think you have to wrap this up until you get deep into the summer. I think when you get this long into the summer, when you're talking by the end of June, you're expecting to hand it out. People are mentally exhausted at that point of like, okay, let's just finally get there. NBA's kind of like this too, where you just go super long into the season.
When it's 90 degrees outside, I'm not really watching the guys on the ice anymore.
Well, that's how you cool
There's
off.
a lot going. Even then, it's still kind of hot here in the loop. But what I find so interesting about this is, at one point I thought, okay, well, maybe it's like the market size, but the ratings were better last year, and it's the same market of Florida. What I find interesting is when I think about just viewership as a whole from like the U.S. perspective, it goes to what you're talking about, right? It's kind of the star power, right? Think back to the World Series. Now it was the big markets. It was New York and L.A., but the star power that was on display in baseball, it was Judge, Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman. It was like, holy cow, and Juan Soto, by the way, at that point too. And then I even think back to, we had this conversation, again, it's a different sport. It definitely draws bigger numbers as a whole, but I do find it interesting is the NCAA tournament this year. Very chalk, right? And I thought, okay, well, that probably is going to lead to maybe fewer people watching those games because there's no Cinderella to go along with. Now the ratings were better, right? The ratings were better because it was...
people want to watch the teams that they know.
Because it's the teams they want to see. It's the teams they want to see, and there's a little bit of star power with Cooper Flag. I don't know what you're looking for if it's not this.
So Jamel Hill just tweeted this out, and I caution to even say her name because people will have a visceral reaction one way or the other when I bring her up, but it is what it is. I think it's an interesting question. Been wondering this for a while, but are sports becoming less impressive to people because expectations are so wildly out of control? So many things are competing for people's attention that it feels as though the people's thirst for pageantry is more than an actual great game. I think there's something to this. Like, I watch this is the coverage on ESPN, not Turner, so I want to be clear here. The coverage from ESPN on these NBA games has been an atrocity. It's been embarrassing.
Same way in hockey during the playoffs.
But for the basketball side of things, when they talk about these games post-game, and I want to set Scott Van Pelt aside, he's fantastic, and he's done a really good job on the post-game Sports Center version, but the actual post-game show for ESPN, they don't talk about the game. They just talk about, what does this mean for legacies? And what does this mean for, Giannis or Kevin Durant? Or, hey, yesterday, for example, what's his face? Why am I blanking on his name? Tyrese Halliburton. He's hurt. He's clearly hurt. He's not right. He was asked about it after the game. He's like, yeah, I'm battling through, but I'm playing. This is what I want to do. This is the most important games of my life. And after the game, you have Stephen A. Smith come on, and he's tearing him down because he's not giving his team enough. It's like, dude, he's hurt. What are you talking about? And so it's all of this stuff leading to us, I think at times, losing sight of the stuff that actually matters. This has always been my argument on like the playoffs matter thing. If we don't care about the games, if we don't place value on the winning and the losing, and it's just about the transactions, dude, we're losing the heart of what is supposed to be sports. This is supposed to be about the competition. And I think at times it instead becomes about like winning the transaction as opposed to winning the game.
Yeah.
And that leads to those being the things that people focus on. And the tail almost starts to wag the dog, and then you lose interest in the games, and now you end up with numbers like this. That's just one example of this. I think that's way overstating this specific problem for the Stanley Cup Final, but it is something that I do think is a potential issue for sports in general.
I agree with that to an extent. Like, I think the NBA's kind of always had that problem. Like when you're talking about the playoffs, like again, like right now, what's the coverage about? It's about where's KD going to play? The offseason hasn't started yet.
Yeah.
And in the regular season, it's always about, well, boy, what about this team when they're chasing a playoff spot? Instead, it's, oh, who's going to make the trade? Who's going to help the Lakers? Who's going to help this? I've never felt, and maybe I'm wrong, you would have a better answer on this, Alex. I've never really felt that the NHL's fallen into that, victim to that. Like, sure, there's some offseason conversations going on, but that's because their offseason starts in 2 weeks.
Starts the day after the cup is handed out.
That one is kind of like they're kind of forcing that hand. Maybe the NBA's that way too, to where maybe that's part of what's driving this. But the NBA feels more like that in the regular season. I've never really felt the NHL's fallen victim to that.
Somebody on the text line said, guys, a lot of your show is talking about the Blues transactions. Totally, because the Blues are out of it. There's no games to break down. When the Blues were playing...
And we got 3 hours.
Well, sure. And that's part of the problem for ESPN, right? They've got time. But when the Blues were playing, dude, the vast majority of our shows were breaking down that game.
Yeah,
what
and every
happened
element
here?
to
What does
it
it matter for the next game, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, absolutely. Right now, our show is a lot of transaction talk, because the Blues are not playing, so that is the news for the Blues, if you want to say, or the content is about the transactions. And for the Cardinals, many of their games are being played right now with the question looming ahead, what does this mean for their transactions? But that doesn't mean, like, we're going to talk coming up next. Like, what does this game mean for Matthew Liberatore tonight? And I'm not talking about for the trade deadline, the transactions, or anything like that, but how does he get back on track? And what does that mean for Matthew Liberatore in this rotation for the Cardinals? Talk about that coming up next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and it is time to unlock your inner champion. The place to do so is with Victory Men's Health. Check them out today. They have 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, and they make it super easy to book that first appointment online at victorymenshealth.com. When you go to the website, again, victorymenshealth.com, put in your name, email, phone number, tell them BK with 101 ESPN sent you, and tell them what it means for you to unlock your inner champion. Maybe that means getting help with your erectile dysfunction issues that you've been dealing with. Maybe you're trying to lose some of that unwanted weight. They can help you out with that over at Victory Men's Health. They also can check your testosterone levels. They can check on micronutrient levels. They've got red light therapy programs, a supplement shop, vitamin infusions, cardiovascular testing. It's all available for you today at victorymenshealth.com. 4 locations: O'Fallon, Missouri; O'Fallon, Illinois; Sunset Hills; and the location that I personally go to in Town and Country. Check them out today, Victory Men's Health, and online at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, we'll talk about transactions here on BK and Ferrario.
Yes.
Oh, damn it. We want X's and O's. Sorry, I was chewing almonds over there.
That's why your mic was off.
I appreciate that.
Fair.
Nobody wants to hear a guy chew almonds.
It's the worst.
But I didn't know we had 20 seconds left, and I already had a mouthful of almonds, and let's take a little bit longer to chew down.
What's your go-to nut?
What? Hold on.
Dump that, please. Almond would probably be number one, but they got to be flavored almonds, not like dry almonds.
I think I'm becoming a walnut guy. I think that's part of my personality now.
Now that's
Walnuts are
interesting.
nasty. Yeah. Walnuts are nasty. Pistachios are number two.
Ooh, interesting.
But don't give me
choice.
Don't give me the unshelled one. I
was
want
about
to
to
work
say.
for my pistachio.
Okay.
Oh, I do not want to work for my pistachio.
Yeah, the unshelled one, they're not as salty. Gotta get that good kick.
I'm with you. T-Bone, what's your nut of choice?
T-Bone, what's your nut of choice?
Oh, man.
You seem like you're a peanut kind of guy.
I am a
Peanuts would be
guy.
like maybe at the bottom of my
Oh, yeah,
list.
I hate peanuts.
Oh, I think peanut would be one for me.
At the Blues game.
Almonds are up there. I like a dark chocolate almond. That is
yeah.
chef's kiss.
The one place where I like a peanut is at the baseball game, and that is where you will find
no,
Matthew
that's not even
Liberatore
gonna work.
later on this evening. Matthew
terrible.
Liberatore taking the mound once again
his
for the
favorite nut
Cardinals. His last couple of games have not gone according to plan. Since that Rangers start, he goes 5 innings, gives up 4 earned runs, 7 hits there. Then 4 innings, 7 earned runs against the Kansas City Royals. And finally, against the Blue Jays, it happened again. 5 innings, 9 hits, 5 earned runs allowed. Home run balls are getting to him. Prior to the last couple of games, there were some times where he was getting deeper into counts, and that was a bit of an issue. But maybe most notably, the velocity is starting to dip. And it's not early on. Alex, he's still hitting 94, 95 in the first 3 innings of these games. You get into the 4th, the 5th, and certainly by the 6th, and it's just gone. And that, I think it was the Royals start, if I'm not mistaken. It was like, oh, you're throwing 89? What is happening here? Why is this happening? And they basically told him, like, hey, go take a shower. I don't know what's going on, but we need to figure this out. We're not going to let you throw another pitch.
God, what a line if you go to the mound to take him out and say, hey, go take a shower. You stink.
He says it's his mechanics that are getting out of whack. It is strange a little bit that they're not out of whack at the beginning of the game, and then by the 4th or 5th inning, it's starting to hit. Maybe that speaks to, hey, he feels fine after the rest. And then as he keeps going, his body starts to get a little weakened. It starts to get more tired. And then that's when the mechanics go, right? When I'm running, the first sign of me being in a problematic situation is my mechanics start to go. And I start to sway my knees, and that's when the IT band starts to flare up and all that stuff. So I'm basically Matthew Liberatore of running half marathons.
Swaying your knees, or are you shaking your butt? Which one are you doing?
All of the above. Alex, what are you looking for tonight against the White Sox? Because this should be a matchup that he's able to take advantage of.
I think I'm looking to see what it looks like as you get deeper into your starts. But overall, for Matthew Liberatore, I don't know how pivotal this start is. Yes, you don't want to get lit up by the Chicago White Sox for how bad they are as a team. But this whole season feels like it's a test for Matthew Liberatore. And he's in the middle of it right now. You knew this was going to happen at some point. How do you dig yourself out of it? So it's not just one White Sox start. If you go bad and then the next one you're like, see, he's not a starting pitcher. I think they're trying to figure out what you look like for the longevity of a season. If you're a starting pitcher, how do you hold up? Do you at some point get right? I mean, he's already 2nd most innings pitched in his MLB career. And you're approaching the most you've ever pitched. I think 120 something has been the most he threw in the minors. This feels like a start that you have to right the ship if you're Matthew Liberatore, but it also feels like this whole season is the part that they're judging him off of, not if it goes 4 or 5 bad starts.
T-Bone?
I think for Liberatore.
Oh, do we have the other thing?
Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. I wasn't prepared for it.
101 ESPN breaking news.
Liberatore's on the IL.
No, we got this from the 636. Wow, you geniuses would think that a peanut is a nut. It's a legume. Read a book for once. That's true. Peanut is not a nut.
Hold on. Did you just... Oh, my gosh.
So
this
we
is like
need
Kyle
to clarify
getting
that
back from the IL.
A peanut is not actually a nut. It is not in the tree nut family. All right, T-Bone, your thoughts on Matthew Liberatore going into tonight?
Talk about.
I don't even know how to transition
none
from
of my
that.
points mattering.
Go take a shower. You stink.
Yeah.
I think for Liberatore, tonight is going to be kind of telling of when you look at when he starts, is he starting to really, is this whole mechanics thing, is that a real thing? Or is this hey, this is fatigue that's starting to come up upon him. And I don't think that says anything about him for the long term, right? I think what you're talking about, where he's reaching towards the max of what he's thrown from what it was last year to what he's thrown in his career, I think you're going to we see starters deal with this all the time, right? We saw Jordan Hicks when he transitioned last year in San Francisco from bullpen arm to starter. He looked really good early on. And then the body really started to figure out, hey, whoa, this whole starters thing, not used to it. And then he kind of fell off of a cliff. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that if that happens to Matthew Liberatore. Now, what it does for the Cardinals in the here and now when it comes to winning, it's terrible.
That's bad.
It's terrible because you go from having what we thought was a pretty good 1-2 combination, your rotation of Sonny Gray, Matthew Liberatore, Fetty, a dangerous 3, but a 3.
But a fun one.
2, hey, we have 3 4s in our rotation all of a sudden, 3 5s, if you will. That, in the short term, probably pushes the Cardinals into sell mode because you're just not going to be able to win with that kind of performance from the rotation as a whole. But in the long term, I have no worries about Matthew Liberatore. I'm curious to see if he is able to kind of, even if he doesn't have his A-plus stuff tonight, you should be able to work your way around the White Sox. That is when you become more of a pitcher than a thrower. Hey, stuff's not there. I can still work my way around the Chicago White Sox lineup.
Man, the Jordan Hicks comparison is a really interesting one, T-Bone, because Matthew Liberatore, it was 10 starts for him, where I was like, okay, this is real. It's looking really good for him. A 2.7 ERA through his first 10 starts, had gone 59 innings in those 10 starts, allowed 52 hits. For Jordan Hicks last year, through his first 11 starts, 58 innings, 2.3 ERA, allowed 44 hits. He was off to just this crazy good start. And then everything went south for him. And suddenly, instead of getting deep into games and pitching the way that he had been, it was a disaster. And in his next 9 starts, he went 2-7, 40 innings with a 6.5 ERA.
Well, what I'm hearing is I could get Rafael Devers for Matthew Liberatore.
And then he was in the bullpen the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. By mid-July, bullpen time. It was basically he got to the All-Star game, and they're like, we can't do this. And he got one more start after the All-Star game. I think they just wanted to give him the time off, see where he looked, what he looked like. And then they decided, okay, yep, you're a bullpen arm. Now they decided to go back to it again this year, and it's been a horrible disaster for Jordan Hicks. Now he's a Boston Red Sox. Congratulations to him.
They got Devers for him.
But
success.
If you're the Cardinals, that's what you're hoping to push back against is, okay, is it going to go the way that it did for Hicks? Or can this guy stabilize? Can Liberatore get this thing back on track? He has had more traction in a more recent past than Hicks as a starting pitcher. Can he find himself again? Was this a blip, or is it about to go in the direction that it did for Hicks?
And this is the
if
runway
so,
of
what
the
does
season.
that mean?
Yeah, and that's where I find it interesting because in theory, when you say like, hey, like the Giants had to move Hicks to the bullpen, so then they brought up, I don't remember who it was, but they brought somebody up to take that role as a starter. Like, okay, sure, in theory, you can say, well, the Cardinals should just do that, and they've got a spot for McGreevy. Okay, but if they become sellers at the deadline, there's a chance they move Eric Fetty, and now you can't even do what we just talked about there, right? Liberatore has to be a starter. They are so thin on starting pitching depth, they might get caught in a really difficult spot, which is, hey, Liberatore's body, maybe he's not hurt. He's clearly getting tired, right? Maybe his body is getting tired, and it's what's leading to poor results, but we don't have an answer to push him to the bullpen to then bring somebody up and start. And that's where I think, to your question of what does that mean, both in the short term here for whether it be the winning as a team as the Cardinals, it's bad. But also for Matthew Liberatore and what's doing best for him, that is something that could become very, very bad for him as a player from what the Cardinals get kind of pinched into doing because, once again, they don't have pitching depth.
It's 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line from the 314. Guys, does this indicate that Libby needs to change his offseason plan? I don't know. I think that's the kind of stuff that the Cardinals are going to have to look at if things go poorly today and they continue to do that, because T-Bone's right. I don't think he's losing his spot in the rotation. You just see this thing through at least to the All-Star break at a minimum. And if it goes poorly again today and the same issues are arising, I think you have to continue to explore what's leading to this. What are we missing? Do you need 15 days? Maybe it is as simple as, hey, Libby just needs a little bit of time off. He hit a wall, which is natural. He hasn't been a starter at this level ever in his career for this extended stretch of time. Maybe he needs an IL stint, and you get him back after a couple of weeks, and he goes right back into the rotation again. And that's all he needed. Or maybe it's something different. Maybe it is, hey, we're dealing with some stuff with the right calf, and we'll just take some time on that. I don't know. We don't have that information on the outside. They certainly aren't going to tell us. But those are the kinds of things that you wonder about as to what's leading to these issues in game. Because when he starts the game, everything looks great. He gets into the second inning, still looks really good. Third inning, still looks really good. There are issues. He's not as good against right-handed hitters right now as he was earlier on this season. These are things that you also need to look into. But the biggest thing for him is he hits a wall midway through the game. What's leading to that? Why is it happening, and how do we fix it? Hopefully tonight is the start of getting things back on track in that regard. Matthew Liberatore taking on a really bad Chicago White Sox team. Cardinals in desperate need of a win tonight in Chicago. Coming up next, is there any pressure on Mo at this year's deadline? Let's talk transactions next here on BK and Ferrario.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals back in action tonight as they start a 3-game set at the Chicago White Sox. 6:40 will be first pitch. Matthew Liberatore will be on the mound for St. Louis. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final between the Panthers and the Oilers as the Panthers look to capture back-to-back Stanley Cup champipionships. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30 with puck drop at 7. The Sports Update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alex and T1 on BK. So, is there any pressure on John Mozeliak at this year's trade deadline? There was a piece earlier today over on ESPN.com. They ranked the 6 general managers facing the most pressure. Obviously, Mo was not a part of that because the Cardinals are not one of the teams that you expect to be representing, like, the National League and the World Series or something at the deadline.
How dare you?
So, he's not going to have that kind of pressure. But do you guys think that there is a lot of pressure on Mo this year at the deadline?
Absolutely not. I don't think there's any pressure on him. I think from the perspective of Mo, people want me out as fast as possible. And this is just going to be the final benchmark for Cardinals fans to officially be done with me. Whether you like that opinion or not, if you're John Mozeliak, that's the way that it feels the fan base is directed towards you in the front office. So I don't know how there would be any pressure. I mean, the biggest pressure point would be what you get in return of Ryan Helsley. And I don't even know if that's on Mo. Mo's making the trade, but Chaim Bloom might be the one that's behind the scenes with all of this. So I don't see any pressure on Mo. I think this is just a matter of finish your final trade deadline and move on.
I don't think it's pressure so much as it is. I strangely think there's upside. I almost think there's no downside this year at the deadline for Mo.
What's the upside?
Let me explain the downside.
The downside is buying.
Like who's going to change their opinion of John Mozeliak based on what happens this year at the deadline? Realistically speaking, in like a bad way. If you're already down on Mo, this year's deadline ain't going to change that. But I do think there's potential upside. And let me explain that side for you, T-Bone. If you end up, especially if you sell at this year's deadline, and like Pete Crow Armstrong, good player, you'd agree?
You're going to trade for him?
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
But you know how they acquired Pete Crow Armstrong? They traded Javi Baez to the Mets. And at the time, Pete Crow Armstrong was hurt, but the Cubs acquire him, and a few years later, he's not only a part of their lineup, he's a star in their lineup right now. And that's the way that I think if you're in Mo's shoes, the way that you can actually be remembered a little bit more fondly, strangely enough, after your tenure than you were during your tenure is if what you do leads to the next success for the Cardinals, right? If you leave this thing in a place where Ivan Herrera becomes a star, and maybe you see Brendan Donovan here for the next 5 years. He gets an extension. He's just a really good player for the Cardinals on whatever the next contender is going to be. Wilson Contreras made the transition seamlessly. He's a part of the face of whatever this next version is. And then they trade for somebody at the deadline that maybe you trade Helsley and you get a number 2 starter in return for 2 years from now. Like those kinds of things, I think can help you in the eyes of Cardinals fans as you get further away. And as you start to see the team take shape around those players with Chaim Bloom in charge. So I think that is the upside for him. I don't think there's pressure, though, necessarily.
Yeah.
I agree there's no pressure. I think if they're buying, like, there's no pressure on anybody. I think if they're selling, and like, maybe this is where, I don't know if I say we disagree. But I just think if they sell, I think it's just going to be assumed that Chaim Bloom was the one that was not necessarily calling the shot, but signing off on the return.
That
because
sucks,
that's the
man.
guy, like...
I'm not saying it's
unfair
wrong.
or not to Mo.
But he might be.
Yeah, because like if I'm Chaim, I want to, like, if they become sellers and you're trading Ryan Helsley, to your point on, like, maybe you acquire your number 2 starter that's 2 years from now. That's Chaim Bloom's era, right? That's the next 2027 Cardinals are Chaim Bloom's team.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. My pushback would be a lot of those same people that won't give Mo the credit for that don't give Mo credit for 2011.
Now, that one I disagree with. Like, I think Mo should get credit for 2011.
I'm totally in agreement with you, but you can't do both. You can't say
I think
Mo
this
gets
is different.
You can't say Mo gets no credit for 2011 and also would not get credit for the deadline this year if they get something of significance in return for the future. You've got to at least give one or the other, man. Like, if you think that Mo had nothing to do with this year's deadline, then you should also give him all of the credit for 2011. Because then that would mean that he was the one that was in charge of that team. He had 4 years of leading up to that, man. But that would be my side effect.
Yeah, I agree with that. He should get credit for the 2011 team because he instrumented a bunch of those trades that led to them getting to the World Series, right? Acquiring Edwin Jackson, acquiring Dotel,
and a bullpen that won you the World Series.
Yeah, exactly. Like that one, I can't believe he doesn't get credit for it. I think he deserves a ton of credit for it. Yeah. This is the one where to me, it's hard because he has said publicly, like, hey, when it comes to dealing with the major league team, that is me. But if I need to consult Chaim Bloom for stuff in the future, that is Chaim. So the way I would read that is, okay, sure, Mo's involved and maybe even starts the conversation. Like Dombrowski, let's use the Phillies as the example. Sure. I assume they call Mo and not Chaim first, but then he has to loop Chaim in because maybe Mo likes something that's in this deal, and Chaim goes, dude, I read the reports. No thanks. That's pitch to contact. I like swing and miss. So that's why I think, like, if there's pressure on anybody, and I don't even know if it's that high, but you want to start off by getting off to the right foot on the fan base, or even just starting the next era of Cardinals baseball in 2026, the Helsley deal is the one to circle. That's really the only one that I think is going to make a significant difference. And that's where I say, okay, there's a little bit of pressure on Chaim to make sure he gets that one right if they are sellers. There's buyers, and nobody's under pressure under this for the Cardinals, I say, at the deadline.
He's T-Bone, that's Alex, I'm BK. Coming up next, we'll hit the rewind and finish this thing off here on 101 ESPN. I think it's been a good show today, Alex. We talked about nuts. We talked about Tom Stillman's comments from earlier today over on Jeremy Rutherford's article. We then got Jeremy Rutherford's perspective on that article as he joined us here on the show. We've spent a decent amount of time talking about the Cardinals as well. Their offense really going into this massive slump over the last 16 games. Their pitching side of things, what we can expect from Matthew Liberatore as he's back on the mound tonight against the Chicago White Sox. Should be an interesting series. I didn't expect it to be interesting. You're going up against the White Sox on the road. This is a terrible opponent, but given the context of where the Cardinals are at, I know it feels like every series, every game right now almost feels like a referendum on the 2025 Cardinals. This really feels that way because if you lose this series, whew,
snowball becomes an avalanche.
Yeah, it's not going to feel good. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Whether it should or not, it's not going to feel good here in St. Louis. Let's talk a little bit about where the Cardinals are at. The offense has gone cold. The pitching is running into the regression that we all thought would potentially come for them. All of this is taking place at a time where they had, I think it was 2 off days in the entire month of June. Alex, what do you want to see from the Cardinals in this series against the Sox, acknowledging that they're going up against a terrible team?
Yeah, I think that's the hard part because whatever you see in this White Sox series, it's going to be like, okay, great, you stopped the bleeding, but does the bleeding start back up after this series? I mean, personally, I'd like to see the offense break out in this series. Like, this pitching staff isn't great, nor is the offense. It's just a bad club. But for an offense that has gone really cold, boy, you could use a confidence booster before you take on the Chicago Cubs and really the Cincinnati Reds. When you get 2 division rivals coming up on home field, it would really be beneficial to you if Lars Nootbaar could break out of his slump, if you could get Mason Wynn back to what he was. That's what I'd love to see in this series. And again, I'll understand afterwards saying, like, they just did that against the White Sox. Let's see what you do against better pitching. But, man, you got to find something to stop the bleeding. And right now, this is your opportunity if you're the offense.
To me, this is all about the pitching in this series. Like, the offense, you're going to go through slumps. That happens. Even the Dodgers will go through slumps this season, and you're really going through it offensively right now. And strangely enough, you're going up against a couple of kind of interesting young arms over the next couple of days. The White Sox aren't good. Couple of decent starting pitchers, though. They're okay. Their offense is horrible. I mean, you look at their offense this season, they're one of the 4 worst in the league. But you went up against the Royals, they're a bad offense, too. They're the 2nd worst in the league in terms of scoring runs. And you made them look good. So if you can make the Royals look good, you can make anybody look good. The White Sox included. They basically have 2 guys that you have to worry about offensively. It's 2 players in their lineup, Miguel Vargas and Luis Robert Jr. If those guys don't hurt you, they don't really have anybody else that can. So I think, to me, this is really about the pitching. Keep them off the board, man. You've talked about this a lot, Alex, lately. The Cardinals are continuously chasing these games. They always feel like they're having to come from behind, and they have the ability to do so, which is nice. But you shouldn't have to chase games in this series. This should be a series where you're playing from ahead, you get to go to some of your lower leverage arms, and you almost use this as like a get-right series. But you can't treat it that way because you really need to win these games. So the upside is very limited. The downside is, hard to even fathom. If you end up losing 2 out of 3 or potentially all 3 games in this series, there's a lot on the line here.
Yeah, the series as a whole is a pass-fail, right? You have to take minimum 2 or 3. Probably should be a sweep in this series. But I am more focused on the offense.
And the pass is like, you are the requisite height to ride this ride.
Yeah.
It's not like a congratulations, you passed.
The pass is you move on to the next level, and we get to see you against the Reds and the Cubs.
Yeah, but like, you ask which group are you more monitoring? To me, it's the offense. Because sure, maybe they do have interesting arms. The pitching just kind of determines their floor, right? I've said this before, especially after watching them against the Royals, the Rangers. Said on the latest episode of the Redbird Report, their pitching can lose to anybody. Their pitching can make any offense.
I guess maybe
look
we're
good.
looking at it a little differently. I'm talking about for the series. You're talking about more a little big picture.
Sure,
possibly.
but I still think that fits for this series, right? I mean, the Royals aren't a good offense, and the pitching made them look good. I think the offense, this has to be the get-right moment, because if you're not hitting the White Sox, you're not hitting the Cubs, you're not hitting the Reds. Yeah. Like, there's where the problem is. This is where this series, I know the offense is struggling. You need a couple of guys to have this be their bounce-back series. You need a Nootbaar to figure it out maybe here, or you need a Mason Wynn to figure it out here. Because if you don't hit the White Sox, I can guarantee you're not touching the Cubbies or you're not touching the Reds.
And I think this series is your season. I mean, if you lose 2 or 3 or lose all 3, you're talking about having to sweep the Reds and the Cubs to pull yourself back into this thing.
The tough part for me is like the pitchers that you're seeing in this series are better than the pitchers that you're potentially going to see in the Reds series.
Well, that's fine, but if you want to make the playoffs, you're going to have to go up against better pitchers than this.
I don't think that the offense is going to be this bad all season long. I think they're going through a slump right now, and that happens to teams. It's everything, right? The pitching has been bad. The offense has been bad. It needs to all get better. And so, like, really, we're arguing on both things need to happen. But the thing for me, it's almost like the movable force versus whatever the saying is. The Cardinals pitching should be better than this offense. It should be. Like, you need to be better. Sonny Gray tomorrow, you are much better as a pitcher than that offense is. Their offense is horrible. They have no way to really hurt you. So you should look good with your pitching staff, especially with your defense, everything that goes along with it. Your offense, I don't know if it's going to look good against these pitchers, man. And I understand that that's not a great statement about where your offense is at right now, but that's the reality. Your offense is in a bad place, and you're going up against a guy tonight that is a good, young, talented arm. I don't know if that's going to go well for you. It shouldn't have to. You should be able to score 3 runs in a game like this, and you win because your pitching gave you that chance. Because Liberatore was on the mound, he gave you 5 or 6 strong, and then you went to the bullpen and you locked it down. Because this offense has no fear factor in it. So that's my perspective on this thing is your pitching has got to be better than them because their offense is bad. The arms that you're seeing here, like if you saw these exact same arms against the Cubs, against the Reds, against the Guardians, whomever, they'd be fine arms. The offense is what's different to me about this series. For them, their offense.
Yeah, I think you have to have a slump buster at some point for some of your hitters, and I'd much rather it should be against a White Sox team compared to the Hunter Greens and the Imanagas with the Chicago Cubs. Those are harder to break out of cold spells or lacking confidence than would be against a White Sox team.
I give credit, like Smith is a good arm, right? He's intriguing. So that's the one like I'll say, okay, sure.
Hauser's been really good this year.
But, like, he may be good this year, and I'm not taking anything away from him. He doesn't strike fear into me. Your offense should hit that guy. Your offense should hit Burke. Your offense should hit their bullpen, which is bottom 10 in the league in ERA. Like, that's where I would say I agree with what you're saying on their offense. But when you pitch to contact, you're going to make some offenses look even better than what they are on paper. And that would be my thing is, to me, you're not winning this series based on your pitching. You're winning this series if your offense hits their pitching.
It's T-Bone. That's Alex. I'm BK. You think they win tonight?
We should probably just end the show.
I think they will. I think they win tonight by a final score of 3-1.
I think they lose.
I think they lose tonight and they win the next 2.
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk about that all tomorrow. Looking forward to it. We'll have Brant Brown, Cardinals hitting coach, tomorrow on the show. We'll also talk to Jim Bowden. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. Fast Lane's coming up next. What's your go-to nut?